Chapter 1. The amber glow of my vintage lamp spilled across the worn floorboards like honey, casting long shadows that danced among the towers of leather-bound books crowding my apartment. I adjusted my camera, breathing in the comforting perfume of aged paper and cinnamon candles that had become as much my signature as the books themselves. "Welcome back to Midnight Pages, my fellow wanderers of forgotten lore," I said, finding that sweet spot between scholarly confidence and the slightly breathless enthusiasm I could never quite suppress. I'm Ellie Blackwood, and tonight we're exploring the curious case of spontaneous combustion in 17th century occult practitioners. My fingers instinctively reached for the silver pentagram hanging at my throat. My grandmother's final gift before she passed into whatever mystery awaits us all. Its familiar weight against my collarbone always steadied me during filming. A talisman connecting me to the woman who'd first whispered of ancient powers when I was too young to doubt them. The vintage dress I wore, black velvet with intricate silver embroidery, wasn't merely aesthetic. In the liminal space between academia and the booktube community, presentation mattered. My small but devoted audience of 22,000 subscribers didn't come for mainstream bestsellers or peppy unboxings. They came for the forgotten texts, the whispered legends, the knowledge that had fallen through the cracks of conventional scholarship. After filming, I collapsed into my reading chair, laptop balanced precariously on the arm as I scrolled through comments from last week's video. Most were thoughtful analyses or grateful thanks. But a pattern had emerged over recent months, viewers hungry for darker material, more dangerous texts, rituals with teeth rather than academic curiosities. One username appeared repeatedly, Silverfang. Have you encountered the Thornier grimoire? Baltic in origin, silver wolf motifs, summons rather than describes. The wolf grimoire appears during lunar cycles. Look for silver inlay that catches moonlight. Some books find their readers, Miss Blackwood. The wolf hunts under tomorrow's moon. I should have recognized the warning braided through those words. Instead, I felt only the electric thrill of the chase, the scholar's hunger for undiscovered knowledge. The estate sale had been announced with little fanfare. Just a small notice in the local paper about the Blackwell mansion finally being cleared after its elderly owner passed without heirs. Something in the sparse description tugged at me, a whispered promise of forgotten treasures. The Victorian mansion loomed against the autumn sky, its weathered grandeur still visible beneath decades of neglect. Inside, dealers and collectors picked through crystal decanters and mahogany furniture. But I felt drawn upward, away from the crowd. The attic stairs creaked beneath my feet, protesting this intrusion after years of solitude. Dust motes danced in the slanting afternoon light, transforming the cramped space into something ethereal. Among forgotten trunks and shrouded furniture, a single locked chest sat apart from the rest, its brass fittings tarnished but intact. The key hung from a faded ribbon nearby. An invitation too perfect to be coincidence. The chest's hinges sighed like a long-held breath, finally released. Inside, wrapped in midnight velvet, lay a book unlike any I'd ever encountered. The leather binding wasn't merely old, but somehow alive, supple and warm beneath my fingertips. Intricate silver inlay formed wolves in various postures around the border, their eyes tiny chips of what appeared to be ruby, catching light with unnatural eagerness. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you." The caretaker's voice startled me. He stood at the attic entrance, his weathered face a map of concern. "This is part of the estate sale, isn't it?" I asked, already protective of my find. "Technically." He approached cautiously, as one might a sleeping predator. "That belonged to old Mr. Blackwell's grandfather. Family legend says he was never the same after acquiring it. started locking himself away during full moons, speaking languages nobody recognized. I traced the silver inlay, noticing how the metal seemed to warm beneath my touch. It's Baltic in origin, I believe. His eyes widened. You can read it? Not yet, I admitted, but I recognize enough to identify the region. Relief visibly washed over him when I purchased the book, as though transferring a burden he'd carried too long. Take it far from here, he said as I left, his voice following me like autumn leaves skittering across pavement. Some things aren't meant to be kept. Back in my apartment, the grimoire claimed space on my desk like a visiting dignitary, dominating the room with its presence. Under proper light, I could see the vellum pages were in remarkable condition, unnaturally so for their apparent age. The text itself was written in a Baltic dialect I only partially recognized, requiring constant reference to my collection of linguistic texts. Hours dissolved into days. I pinned my hair messily atop my head, sustained by cooling cups of tea as I pieced together fragments of translation. My cat Poe, normally my constant companion during research, refused to enter the study, watching from the hallway with unblinking amber eyes. What emerged was unmistakably a summoning ritual. Not the metaphorical summoning of wisdom found in philosophical texts, but explicit instructions for calling forth something ancient and powerful. The lunar cycle featured prominently, with specific incantations tied to the full moon's apex. Scholarly caution whispered I should consult colleagues, perhaps contact the university's rare manuscript department. But a deeper, more primal instinct urged secrecy. This discovery was mine alone. My fingers trembled with excitement as I set up my camera, already composing the teaser video in my mind. I've discovered something extraordinary, I told my viewers, unable to keep the breathless quality from my voice. A previously undocumented grimoire with Baltic origins containing what appears to be a summoning ritual tied to lunar cycles. Join me for a special live stream during the upcoming full moon as we translate and analyze this text together. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. My typically modest engagement numbers tripled overnight. I spent the next days in meticulous preparation, ordering specialized candles from an occult supply shop, researching pronunciation guides for the Baltic dialect, arranging my apartment to create the perfect, scholarly yet mystical backdrop for the stream. As I worked, subtle disturbances rippled through my normally peaceful space. Books occasionally tumbled from shelves when I read certain passages aloud. The vintage lamps flickered during translation attempts, though electricians found no issues with the wiring. A cold spot developed near my desk, noticeable enough that I began keeping a shawl draped over my chair. I dismiss these anomalies as coincidence, or perhaps my own suggestible mind influenced by hours immersed in occult material. The academic in me scoffed at the very superstitions I studied. The night before the live stream, a direct message from Silver Fang appeared in my inbox. The summoning words must remain silent until you understand what you call. Some wolves come when beckoned, but cannot be sent away. Beware the lunar apex. I rolled my eyes, filing it away as the dramatic posturing common in occult circles. My thumbnail design was already uploaded, Ancient Wolf Grimoire, live translation on the full moon, and the subscriber notifications had been sent. There was no turning back now, nor did I wish to. As the full moon approached, subtle changes occurred in the grimoire itself. The silver inlay grew warm to touch, even when the book had sat untouched for hours. Previously illegible sections clarified themselves overnight, as if the text were rewriting itself when I wasn't looking. Most disturbing, when placed in direct moonlight streaming through my window, the leather cover seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm not unlike a heartbeat. The rational explanations, metal expanding with temperature changes, my improving Familiarity with the text, the power of suggestion, grew increasingly hollow, even to my skeptical mind. The night of the livestream arrived with perfect meteorological cooperation. Clear skies promising unobstructed moonlight. I transformed my living space, moving furniture to create a ritual-like circle, positioning my desk where moonlight would illuminate both myself and the grimoire at the lunar apex. The camera was angled to capture this tableau, with ring lights carefully placed to supplement the natural moonlight without overwhelming it. Hours before going live, I recorded a brief video diary, a scholarly habit I'd maintained since graduate school. I'm experiencing unexpected nervousness about tonight's translation, I confessed to the camera. Academically, I recognize this text as significant, but there's something else, something I can't quite articulate. I dabbed at a sudden nosebleed, dismissing it as stress or dry air. Perhaps it's simply the weight of presenting such rare material to a public audience. I didn't mention the shadow I glimpsed in my bathroom mirror, a tall, lupine silhouette that vanished when I turned, leaving nothing but my own reflection and a racing heart. For the stream, I chose a vintage black dress with silver accents along the collar and cuffs, elegant yet scholarly, with just enough dramatic flair for the occasion. I didn't realize until much later that the design eerily mirrored ritual attire described within the grimoire itself. The candles were arranged precisely according to the cardinal directions. Though I presented this as aesthetic rather than functional, the grimoire lay open to the central incantation, its silver inlay catching the early moonlight with unusual brilliance. At precisely 11:30 p.m., I went live. Comments immediately flooded the chat as viewers noticed the elaborate setup. "Good evening, fellow seekers," I began, slipping into my presenter's voice. Tonight, we explore something truly extraordinary, the previously undocumented grimoire containing what appears to be a Baltic summoning ritual. Now, obviously, we approach this as scholars, not practitioners. I explained the book's discovery, its distinctive features, and my preliminary translations of the surrounding text. All the while, the moon climbed higher, its light intensifying as it approached its apex. Strange things began happening as I read. The candle flames grew unnaturally tall before becoming impossibly still, burning without flicker as though painted on the air. The moonlight, rather than illuminating the room evenly, seemed to concentrate itself on the grimoire's pages, leaving the rest of the apartment in deepening shadow. Viewers commented on the peculiar quality of the stream, static interrupting otherwise clear audio, strange harmonic tones underlying my voice. The temperature dropping so drastically that my breath became visible as silver mist. I should have stopped. Every instinct honed through years of studying the boundary between known and unknown screamed in warning. But the scholar's curse, the insatiable hunger to unveil hidden knowledge, drove me forward. My finger traced the ancient words on the page, my voice gaining unexpected strength and confidence as I transitioned from translation to pronunciation. The Baltic syllables rolled from my tongue as naturally as my native English, though I'd never spoken them aloud before. Pakulimi vornik forner, raktu sunvala metlu. The grimoire's silver inlay began to glow, not with reflected moonlight, but with an internal radiance that cast impossible shadows. Zertnik wolvis, seonakti vornis, malkrit sunvala. The live-stream chat exploded with comments, but the words blurred before my eyes. The room temperature plummeted until frost crystals formed on my windows despite the autumn warmth outside. Fornir, Pakulimi, Fornir. As I spoke the final words of the incantation, the silver wolves on the book's cover began to move, no longer an illusion of light, but a physical impossibility as metal flowed like mercury. The grimoire lifted from the desk, hovering in the concentrated moonlight, its pages turning by unseen hands. A sound like the tearing of reality itself, not heard with ears, but felt in the marrow of my bones, reverberated through the apartment. The silver inlay erupted in blinding luminescence, and a concussive force threw me backward against the bookshelves. As consciousness slipped away, I glimpsed my laptop screen displaying the livestream chat filled with increasingly panicked messages before the connection severed completely, leaving my viewers in digital darkness. The last thing I saw before blackness claimed me was a pair of amber eyes materializing in the shadows where no eyes should be, watching me with ancient, patient hunger. I had found the grimoire. Or perhaps, as I would soon discover, it had found me. Chapter 2. The Summoning. The digital realm fractured in my absence. As I lay unconscious, my livestream chat transitioned from excitement to confusion, then spiraled into alarm. Later, scrolling through the archived comments with trembling fingers, I would witness the digital aftershocks of what I'd done. Bookish haunt. Did her power just go out? Occult Scribe 43. That light wasn't normal. Did anyone else see the silver glow? Midnight Reader. Guys, this isn't funny. Did you see her face before the feed cut? Academia Gothic. Pretty elaborate hoax. Props to the effects team. The real Silverfang. She's called something she doesn't understand. Someone reach her. Witchy Wanderer. I'm calling emergency services. That wasn't acting. Something's wrong. Consciousness returned like the tide. A slow, inexorable creep of sensation. My cheek pressed against cold hardwood. The copper tang of blood lingered on my tongue where I'd bitten my lip. Through half-open eyes, I saw the grimoire splayed open on the floor beside me, its silver inlay now dull and lifeless, as though it had poured its essence into whatever spell I'd unwittingly completed. The air in my apartment had transformed, electric with the sharp scent of ozone that follows lightning strikes, but beneath it, something wild and organic pervaded the space. Wet earth after rain. Pine needles crushed underfoot, the musk of animal fur. My sacred library sanctuary now smelled like primordial forest. My phone, flung halfway across the room, showed 2:47 a.m. 3 hours lost to darkness. The screen pulsed with notifications. 17 missed calls, dozens of messages, social media alerts multiplying like digital panic. Pushing myself upright sent pain lancing through my skull. The apartment lay in elegant ruin around me, books scattered like autumn leaves, furniture shifted as though by some formidable current, candles melted into grotesque sculptures that defied the laws of physics, wax flowing upward instead of down. Most unsettling were the frost patterns etched across my windows, elaborate whorls like silver ferns despite the summer heat outside. I wasn't alone. The knowledge bloomed in my mind with absolute certainty before any empirical evidence presented itself. Some primal instinct, the same that tells prey when predator watches, prickled at the base of my skull. The apartment suddenly felt too small, the air too thick, as though a storm had been contained within my modest walls. I heard it then, breathing that wasn't my own. Deep, measured breaths from the shadowed corner where my reading nook should have been. Is someone there? My voice emerged as a whisper, scholarly confidence abandoned. The shadow detached itself from the darkness. He stood taller than seemed possible in my modest apartment, his head nearly brushing the ceiling. Wild hair fell past his shoulders, black as midnight, but threaded with silver that caught the moonlight streaming through my windows. His face combined masculine beauty with predatory sharpness. High cheekbones, strong jaw darkened with stubble, and eyes that reflected moonlight with animal luminescence. Most disorienting was his substance, or rather, his inconsistent relationship with it. His form occasionally rippled like heat waves over asphalt, solid one moment and smoke-like the next. His clothing, leather and rough-spun fabric of clearly ancient design, seemed to shift between materiality and vapor, particularly at its edges. I scrambled backward, hand blindly seeking a weapon, closing around the heavy antique letter opener I kept on my desk. The rational part of my brain, the scholar, the academic, raced to catalog explanations: hallucination, elaborate prank, carbon monoxide poisoning, dream state. None accounted for the being before me, or the cold weight of the metal in my palm. His mouth opened, and what emerged was language, but not one I recognized, despite my linguistic training. Guttural consonants and elongated vowels tumbled forth, his tone clearly commanding. When I stared uncomprehending, his expression darkened with frustration. He repeated the phrase, voice deepening into something that vibrated the very air between us. I shook my head, clutching the letter opener before me. I don't understand. This seemed to irritate him further. He stalked forward. No, not walked, but prowled. Movements too fluid for human musculature. His attention darted around my apartment, nostrils flaring as he scented the air, fingers reaching to touch objects with curious intensity. He lifted a crystal paperweight, testing its weight before setting it down with surprising gentleness. He ran fingertips along my bookshelf, examined a framed photograph, each assessment that of a predator learning its environment. Quid hoc loco est. I attempted Latin, my voice steadier than I felt. When no recognition flickered in his expression, I tried German, then fragments of Old English, cycling through languages I'd studied while maintaining my distance. His exploration continued unabated until he reached my laptop. The device chimed with a notification, and he hissed, backing away, posture instantly defensive. When nothing further happened, he cautiously approached again. Prodding the keyboard with one finger, the screen illuminated, casting blue light across his features, and he jerked back as though struck. While he was distracted, I edged toward the grimoire, some instinct telling me it held answers. As my fingers touched its leather binding, his head snapped toward me with unnatural speed. Paculami vernic Thornier, I whispered, repeating words from the ritual. Everything changed, his attention fixed on me with terrifying intensity. Body going completely still in the way of predators who have sighted prey. Then his gaze dropped to the book beneath my hand, and complex emotions warred across his face: recognition, rage, fear, longing. He approached with newfound purpose, hands extended toward the grimoire, yet hovering above it, without touching, as though the book might burn him. His fingers trembled slightly, the first hint of vulnerability I'd witnessed. Thornier? I ventured, intuition guiding me. That's your name? His eyes, amber now rather than gold, widened. He placed a hand against his chest. Thornier, he confirmed, then pointed to the book and made a motion like something being trapped, his expression darkening. Understanding bloomed. You were bound to this book, I said slowly, pointing between him and the grimoire. Imprisoned. He nodded vigorously, then gestured at me and mimicked reading, followed by an explosive motion with his hands. The message was clear. I had released him, at least partially. The academic in me took control, pushing fear aside in favor of investigation. I gestured to myself. Ellie, I said clearly. Ellie, he repeated, the syllables awkward on his tongue. Now that terror had receded enough for proper observation, I noted the details of his manifestation. His form wasn't entirely solid. Occasionally, I could see the faint outline of my bookshelf through his torso. When he passed before my window, moonlight streamed through him differently than it would through flesh. His eyes shifted between human amber and luminous gold, the change seemingly tied to his emotional state. His movements retained that unsettling fluidity, too graceful, too precise, and when he turned quickly, the motion blurred, as though his form couldn't quite maintain cohesion at speed. The digital alarm clock on my desk suddenly chirped the half hour, and he whirled with supernatural speed. A snarl revealing teeth too sharp for human jaws. I reached out instinctively, making calming gestures. "It's just a clock," I said, pointing to the device. "It measures time." His incomprehension was obvious, but my tone seemed to soothe him. The next hour unfolded as an exercise in primitive communication. I pointed to objects, named them, drew simple pictures on paper, while he responded with words in his language and gestures. We both repeatedly returned to the grimoire, using its illustrations as common reference points. Through this halting exchange, I pieced together fragments of his story. Thornir, or Thorne, as I found myself thinking of him, had been bound to the grimoire centuries ago by a Baltic witch. The reason remained unclear, though he made violent gestures and growling sounds when attempting to explain, suggesting some conflict or transgression. The rules of his binding became clearer through demonstration. When he approached my apartment door, his form wavered painfully, becoming nearly transparent before he retreated. He seemed drawn to the windows where moonlight entered, his materiality strengthening in direct lunar rays. When I carried the grimoire to my bedroom, leaving him in the living room, he followed with an expression of discomfort, suggesting the book's proximity was necessary to maintain his manifestation. His frustration with his semi-corporeal state was evident. He could touch solid objects, books, furniture, the walls, but with limited strength. When he attempted to lift my cast-iron bookend, his fingers passed through it. Yet moments later, he could turn pages of a book, though the paper sometimes resisted as if being manipulated by a strong breeze rather than fingers. Most disturbing was what happened when I turned off the lights to see how well he might be visible in darkness. In the blackness, he seemed more solid rather than less, and I watched in horrified fascination as he dragged what appeared to be claws along my apartment walls. The scratches left faint, glowing marks, invisible when I turned the lights back on, but phosphorescent in darkness, arcane symbols I recognized from the grimoire's margins. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep alarm from my voice. He gestured broadly to encompass the apartment, then to himself, then made a protective motion. Marking territory, I realized, not simply exploring, but claiming the space, and perhaps by extension, me. My phone rang suddenly, the sound shattering our tenuous communication. Thorne reacted with startling aggression. His features shifted before my eyes, cheekbones becoming more pronounced, nose and jaw elongating slightly, teeth visibly lengthening behind curled lips. Most terrifying was the audible sound of bones realigning beneath his skin, a subtle cracking that raised every hair on my body. For a suspended moment, I glimpsed the wolf beneath the man, not fully transformed, but hovering at the threshold between shapes. Then, with visible effort, he mastered himself, features settling back into human configuration, though his eyes remained that luminous gold. The phone continued its demanding chime. I moved toward it. But Thorne growled low in his throat, a sound no human could produce. I froze, instinct overriding reason. A notification appeared on my laptop, still open from the live stream. Multiple viewers have contacted emergency services. Please respond to confirm your safety. In the distance, I heard sirens. Thorne heard them too. His reaction was immediate and primal. He retreated to the shadows, his form becoming less distinct, eyes glowing brighter in the darkness. A continuous growl emanating from his chest that seemed to vibrate the very air around us. Panic flooded me, but not for the reason that would have made sense hours earlier. Not fear for myself, but concern for him, this dangerous, ancient being I'd unwittingly summoned. The authorities couldn't find him here. They wouldn't understand. They might try to harm him, or worse, treat him as a research subject, a specimen to be studied and dissected. I moved with surprising clarity, hiding the grimoire beneath sofa cushions, straightening my disheveled appearance as best I could, concocting a plausible explanation about an electrical surge disrupting my livestream, causing me to hit my head when equipment shorted out. As hurried knocking rattled my door, I felt a strange sensation in my chest, a tugging, as though an invisible cord connected my heart to both Thorne and the hidden grimoire. The magical tether was almost physically perceptible, a bond I hadn't consciously created but could now unmistakably feel. Thorne's eyes met mine from the darkest corner of the room, his form nearly invisible except for those gleaming orbs. Understanding passed between us, something elemental that transcended our language barrier. Our fates had become intertwined through ancient magic neither of us fully comprehended. I opened the door to concerned police officers, my smile brittle but convincing. Behind them, watching from shadows human eyes would never penetrate, the creature I had summoned waited with preternatural patience. The witching hour had passed, but our haunting had just begun. Chapter 3: The Stranger. "I'm so embarrassed about this," I laughed, smoothing my disheveled hair with trembling fingers. The officers, one older with skeptical eyes, one younger with concern etched across his face, stood in my doorway, flashlights illuminating the chaos behind me. Live streaming historical reenactments is my thing, you know. My viewers love the authentic details. I gestured vaguely at the scattered books and melted candles, as though they were mere props rather than evidence of supernatural disturbance. The weight of Thorne's presence pressed against my consciousness from the shadows beyond the officer's sight. "We received multiple calls about someone in distress," the older officer said, eyes scanning for inconsistencies in my performance. "Your viewers seem genuinely concerned." "That's so sweet of them." I widened my eyes, channeling every ounce of academic girl charm I possessed. The power surge must have cut the stream at a dramatic moment. I was demonstrating Baltic summoning rituals, purely academic, of course. The candles probably made it look quite realistic. They requested to check the apartment, standard procedure. The younger one explained apologetically. I stepped aside with practiced nonchalance, while my heart threatened to shatter my ribcage. As they moved through my space, I felt, rather than saw, Thorne's presence slipping between shadows, always just beyond their perception, a darkness within darkness. When they finally left, satisfied but not entirely convinced, I collapsed against the closed door, exhaling a breath that seemed to have been trapped in my lungs for centuries. A low, appreciative growl emanated from the corner where my bookshelf met the wall, and Thorne materialized like smoke coalescing into form. "Good," he rumbled, the single word heavy with accent, but unmistakable. I stared at him. "You speak English?" His lips, sensual despite their predatory curve, twisted into something between smirk and snarl. He tapped his temple, then pointed to the grimoire peeking from beneath sofa cushions. The message was clear enough. Knowledge transferred through their connection. Scholarly determination overrode lingering fear. I needed to establish better communication, to understand what, who I had summoned into my life. I gathered language books from my shelves, notebook and pens. Even my old linguistics textbooks. Thorne watched with head slightly tilted, an animal assessing unfamiliar behavior. His fascination with my phone proved both helpful and distracting. When I opened a translation app, he reached toward the screen with cautious reverence, only to growl in frustration when his fingers passed through the technology, while maintaining perfect solidity when he touched my wooden desk. Technology? Difficult, he managed, the words clearly unfamiliar on his tongue. Hours passed in linguistic excavation. I discovered elements of Proto-Baltic languages in his speech, identifying approximate origins in Northern Europe circa 13th century. Each breakthrough electrified my academic mind. This was living history, a linguistic time capsule breathing before me. Thorne. I tested the original pronunciation of his name, rolling the R with more authenticity. Something heated flickered in his amber eyes. Thorne, he corrected, tapping his chest. Now, Thorne. As I researched Baltic paganism on my laptop, he watched the screen with unnerving focus, occasionally reaching toward symbols he recognized, his fingers passing through the display like smoke through glass. When certain runic patterns appeared, he recoiled with a hiss, eyes flashing gold. "These hurt you?" I asked, pointing to the symbols. "Binding," he replied. The word wrapped in a growl. Prison. His agitation increased as the night progressed. Restless pacing, glances toward my kitchen, a subtle trembling in his hands. Understanding bloomed slowly. "You're hungry," I realized aloud. The raw meat I found in my refrigerator, steaks intended for weekend cooking, seemed to both attract and confuse him. He held the package with surprising delicacy, nostrils flaring at the scent. When he finally consumed it, the visual defied physics. The food neither entered a traditional digestive system nor maintained integrity, instead dissolving into his not quite corporeal form, absorbed rather than eaten. Watching him feed awakened something primal in my own consciousness, a recognition of ancient rituals, offering sustenance to entities beyond human understanding. A communion of sorts, though hardly holy. With hunger satisfied, Thorne grew more communicative. Through broken language and crude drawings, he conveyed fragments of his origin. Born to a small Baltic tribe, transformed during a ritual hunt that went awry, becoming something his people both revered and feared. The isolation in his eyes as he related this spoke of an outcast loneliness, instantly familiar to anyone who had ever existed on knowledge's periphery. "How were you trapped?" I asked, pointing to the grimoire. His expression darkened dangerously. He mimed a woman with elaborate gestures suggesting power, then pointed to the silver wolf inlay on the book. The lights flickered as he mimicked betrayal, his guttural snarls vibrating the very air between us. "Woman, witch," he managed through clenched teeth. "Silver binding, punishment." "For what?" I pressed, the scholar in me needing completion. His only answer was a smile that revealed teeth too sharp for human jaws. As pre-dawn light crept through my window blinds, panic flickered across Thorne's face. He rushed to the darkest corner of my apartment, form already becoming transparent at the edges. "Sun weakens," he explained hurriedly. "Night brings strength. I return." I watched in fascination as his substance dissipated like morning mist, dissolving until only a shadowy outline remained. Then nothing at all. The sudden solitude felt both relieving and strangely hollow. Morning light revealed digital chaos in the aftermath of my interrupted livestream. Video clips of my apparent disappearance had gone viral, shared across platforms with theories ranging from elaborate marketing to genuine supernatural event. Occult forums analyzed the phenomena frame by frame. The silver glow, the unnatural shadows, my expression of shock before the feed cut. My subscriber count had doubled overnight. Doubt crept in with daylight's rationality. Had I hallucinated the entire encounter? Could stress, isolation, and immersion in occult literature have manufactured such a vivid delusion? I almost convinced myself until I noticed the claw marks on my wooden bookshelf. 4 parallel grooves, too deep and precise to be self-inflicted. I spent the day in feverish research. ancient werewolf lore across cultures, binding spells in Baltic traditions, historical records of similar supernatural encounters. I created extensive notes, preparing for nightfall and Thorne's return, determined to approach this phenomenon with scholarly rigor despite its impossibility. Taking precautions seemed prudent. I laid salt lines at doorways and windows, drew protective symbols from multiple traditions, set up cameras to document any phenomena. The rational part of my mind recognized these as largely performative measures, unlikely to affect a creature from beyond normal reality, but the activity calmed my restless thoughts. As sunset painted my apartment in amber and crimson, I felt it, a subtle pressure change, like the moment before lightning strikes. First came shadow, formless and fluid, then smoke-like tendrils curling from beneath my sofa where the grimoire remained hidden. The vaporous elements gathered, coalesced, and reassembled into Thorne's humanoid form, more substantial than the previous night, edges more clearly defined, eyes brighter. He regarded my protective measures with amused disdain, deliberately stepping across salt lines, trailing fingertips through carefully arranged herbs. "Such things," he said, his speech noticeably improved, "are for lesser spirits." His adaptation to modern language progressed remarkably, supernatural in its speed and comprehension. When I questioned this, he gestured toward the grimoire. "The book remembers," he explained. "I watched through it. Many owners, many languages, many years." A shadow crossed his features. Much loneliness. Thorne's reactions to modernity proved fascinatingly inconsistent. Electric light captivated him. He passed his hand through the glow of lamps repeatedly, expression almost childlike in wonder. Yet he dismissed my plastic kitchen utensils with contempt, preferring wooden implements. Running water entranced him completely. He spent nearly half an hour watching it flow from my bathroom tap, expression reverent. "Your world is strange," he observed, examining my bookshelf. "So many things, so little meaning." I bristled slightly. "We've advanced considerably since the 13th century. His smile was knife-sharp. "Have you? You still hunger, still fear, still die." As the night deepened, subtle shifts occurred in our dynamic. Thorne moved with growing confidence through my apartment, testing boundaries both physical and psychological. I caught him studying me when he thought I wasn't looking, his gaze alternating between human curiosity and predatory assessment. "There's something you're not telling me," I said finally, setting down my notebook. "About the summoning, about why you're here." He approached with that unnerving fluid grace, stopping closer than human social norms would permit. "The summoning created tether," he explained, gesturing between us with elegant fingers. "My existence bound to your life force. I am here because you are here." Symbiosis. I whispered, the academic term inadequate for the supernatural reality. "Neither can break without consequence," he confirmed, eyes flashing gold momentarily. To demonstrate his growing materiality, he reached for my arm. When his fingers made contact, electricity seemed to arc between us, not metaphorical, but literal, a visible blue spark that jumped from his skin to mine. I gasped at the sensation, neither painful nor pleasant, but entirely other. "What happens if I try to break the binding?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. His smile was all predator. "Pain, then madness, then death." Later, I watched him test the apartment's threshold, pressing against an invisible barrier at the doorway, his form distorting sickeningly, face contorted in pain until he retreated. The spatial limitations of his manifestation were clearly defined, though I suspected they might evolve as his power grew. My laptop chimed with a notification, a direct message from Silverfang, the mysterious subscriber who had warned me before the summoning. "The wolf is not your greatest danger. Others will sense the broken binding. The grimoire's keepers have protected it for centuries. They will come for both of you. Salt lines amuse him because true wards require blood. Yours, specifically. Page 94, before the new moon. I closed the message quickly, but not before Thorne appeared behind me, reading over my shoulder with narrowed eyes. You document everything, he observed. Not a question, but an accusation. I'm a scholar, I replied, closing my laptop. It's what I do. I access your memories while you sleep, he countered, voice neutral as though confessing to borrowing a pencil. It's what I do. We regarded each other in tense silence, mutual recognition of our forced interdependence hanging between us. Neither fully trusted, neither with better options, both aware that our fates had inexplicably intertwined. Later, we stood at my apartment window overlooking the city lights, a tableau of ancient meeting modern. In the glass reflection, Thorne's image flickered, sometimes present beside mine, sometimes absent entirely, as though reality itself couldn't quite decide on his existence. The grimoire lay on the table behind us, and in my peripheral vision, I detected a subtle silver glow emanating from its edges, a reminder that whether Thorne was hallucination or supernatural reality, the book itself contained power my rational mind couldn't explain away. What happens now? I asked softly. Thorne's reflection solidified momentarily, his eyes meeting mine in the glass. Now, he said, voice rumbling like distant thunder. We learn to survive each other. Behind us, unseen but felt, the grimoire's silver wolves began to stir. Chapter 4. Viral fame arrived like a hungry ghost, intangible yet voracious. My laptop screen blazed with an endless stream of notifications. Subscriber count rocketing past 100,000, message requests overwhelming my inbox. Each digital ping, another spectral finger tapping at my consciousness. Midnight Pages had transformed overnight from scholarly niche to viral sensation. My unintended summoning ritual now dissected frame by frame across the digital landscape. Why do they watch? Thorne asked, materializing behind me with that liquid grace that still startled my senses. 3 nights into our uneasy cohabitation, and still his sudden appearances sent electricity skittering down my spine. They think they witnessed something impossible, I replied, scrolling through comment threads where strangers debated my authenticity with religious fervor. Occult Scribe 43. The silver light is consistent with Baltic binding rituals. This wasn't special effects. Rational Skeptic. Clear evidence of video manipulation, probably promoting her book or channel. Paranormal Hunter. The temperature drop registered on my equipment through the screen. This is genuine contact. Academia Gothic. As a folklore professor, I recognize elements of authentic ritual structure, but remain skeptical of the outcome. Thorne leaned closer, his presence creating that peculiar pressure change I'd come to associate with his proximity. Air molecules rearranging themselves to accommodate something that existed between states of being. His laugh, when it finally came, startled me with its richness, a sound both deeply human and somehow wild, like wind through ancient forests. They reduce magic to tricks, he observed, eyes scanning the debates, dimming their own light to avoid seeing in darkness. A notification slid onto my screen. AdSense payment processing. The figure displayed represented more income than my previous 6 months combined. Digital currency flowing from collective fascination with what they couldn't possibly understand. My finger hovered over the acceptance button. Ethical qualms battling practical needs. You hesitate to profit from truth? Thorne asked, reading my thoughts with unsettling accuracy. I hesitate to profit from danger I don't fully comprehend, I corrected, accepting the payment nonetheless. Principles rarely pay rent. Strategy emerged from necessity. I crafted a deliberately vague follow-up video explaining I was researching what happened during the live stream, promising updates while carefully avoiding any substantive revelations. The comments section filled immediately, viewers hungry for crumbs from whatever supernatural feast they believed they'd witnessed. Thorne watched from shadows as I filmed, his presence just beyond my camera's frame. I'd developed new awareness of my apartment's dimensions, angles that would exclude evidence of his existence, lighting that wouldn't catch his occasional shimmer, careful editing to remove any unexplainable background phenomena. "You perform well," he observed after one particularly convincing session where I discussed historical precedents for supernatural encounters without revealing my own ongoing experience. "Half-truths flow like honey from your lips. Academics perfect the art of saying much while revealing little," I replied, reviewing footage where thankfully none of his subtle manipulations of my bookshelf appeared in frame. The live comment session tested my newfound skills. Viewers pressed relentlessly for details. What had happened after the feed cut? Was the book authentic? Had I experienced any strange phenomena since? My deflections grew increasingly creative until one comment froze my blood. "Haunted historian, is your apartment experiencing cold spots, particularly in the southeast corner?" My eyes darted involuntarily toward precisely that corner, where Thorne currently lounged in shadow, observing. He straightened, sensing my alarm, his form rippling with sudden alertness. "Technical difficulties," I announced abruptly, ending the stream. "Someone knows you're here," I whispered to the seemingly empty room. "Many know," Thorne replied, materializing fully. "Few understand. Unintentional evidence accumulated despite my caution." During one filming session, Thorne's growing influence over his environment caused equipment malfunctions, lights flickering in patterns that approximated ancient runic sequences, audio warping into frequencies that made viewers' pets growl at their screens. What I edited out as distractions, viewers interpreted as confirmation, each technical glitch feeding the narrative of genuine supernatural activity. The timeline pressure escalated when Truth Seeker, a popular paranormal investigation channel with millions of subscribers, announced plans to visit my building. "Our equipment detected anomalous energy signatures in this neighborhood," the bearded host claimed, pointing to a thermal imaging device displaying splotches of cold blue against red background. "Something powerful has opened a doorway." Thorne's territorial behavior intensified with each external threat. What began as subtle preferences, favoring my reading chair, lingering by certain windows, evolved into clear demarcation. He established domains within our shared space, marking boundaries with invisible sigils that hummed with energy, perceptible only when I passed through them. Most concerning was his growing attempts to extend influence beyond our apartment's threshold, through me, pressing small objects into my palm before I left. Objects that would temporarily maintain his connection beyond his physical limitations. His command of language evolved with supernatural speed. Archaic sentence structures gave way to fluent, if formally phrased, modern English. His vocabulary expanded through quiet observation of my videos and research materials, occasionally surprising me with terminology no 13th century Baltic warrior should possess. "Your pronunciation of Proto-Germanic reconstructions lacks proper glottal emphasis," he commented casually one evening, correcting my academic paper with centuries-dead accuracy. The modern world both fascinated and wounded him. When I showed him digital maps tracking historical boundary changes across Europe, his expression hardened into something ancient and grieving. "My village?" he asked, finger hovering over the screen where dense Baltic forest had once stood. "An industrial zone now," I admitted softly. "Paper manufacturing." His laughter held no humor. Trees still die there then. His hunger for knowledge proved insatiable, particularly regarding how werewolf lore evolved through centuries. Hollywood depictions elicited contemptuous snarls. Silver bullets, mindless beasts, moon-force transformations. while he leaned forward with evident pride when I showed scholarly texts aligning with his experience, particularly those describing shapeshifters as sentient guardians between worlds rather than monsters. Physical changes manifested gradually in his appearance, each night bringing greater solidity to his form. He now cast proper shadows, left actual footprints in my thick carpet, maintained consistent temperature. His human appearance grew increasingly defined, features settling into permanent structure rather than the fluid approximation of his early manifestations. Yet beneath this stability, wolf aspects remained perceptible. In the amber flash of his eyes when angered, the too fluid grace of movement human musculature shouldn't permit, the barely contained wildness pressing against his skin. Most unsettling were the moments of sensory bleed-through from our connection. Walking down the hallway to collect mail, I suddenly detected the distinct scent of my neighbor's dinner cooking 3 apartments away. During quiet reading, conversations from the floor above became briefly, perfectly audible. At the grocery store, I developed overwhelming awareness of strangers' physical presence, heartbeats, breath patterns, pheromonal signals, leaving me dizzy and disoriented until the sensation faded. The tether strengthens, Thorne explained when I described these episodes. Your awareness expands beyond human limitation. I never agreed to this expansion, I replied, massaging temples that throbbed with unfamiliar neural pathways being formed. His expression held neither apology nor concern. Magic cares nothing for agreements. The blood requirement emerged on our 5th night together. I found him examining his reflection in my bathroom mirror, fingers tracing the increasingly solid planes of his face with scientific curiosity. I require more, he stated without preamble. To maintain this form, to strengthen. More what? I asked, though something primal in me already understood. Your blood. He turned, eyes shifting from amber to gold. Not feeding, anchoring. The biological connection strengthens the magical tether. Academic detachment warred with instinctive recoil. That sounds remarkably like vampire mythology rather than werewolf lore. Your categories are meaningless, he dismissed with aristocratic impatience. All magic flows from life. Blood carries life. Boundaries became necessary for coexistence. I established firm rules, designated spaces within the apartment he wouldn't enter, limitations on physical proximity, strict regulation of the blood he claimed to need. Small amounts, collected with clinical sterility, provided in measured intervals. To my surprise, he accepted these constraints with regal amusement rather than resistance. Your illusion of control comforts you, he observed. I permit it. Silverfang's messages grew increasingly specific, suggesting the grimoire contained not just Thorne's binding, but connections to others of his kind. The book served as prison for many, they wrote. Watch for signs, electrical disruptions, animal behavior changes, dreams of running through unfamiliar forests. The wolf is rarely alone. Community provided unexpected resources. Specialized forums discussing my case connected me with scholars of Baltic folklore who provided valuable translations of the grimoire's marginal notes. Practicing pagans offering protection rituals with historical validity. Historians identifying the book's potential Baltic origins near the Latvian-Lithuanian border. Thorne began teaching me rudimentary magical awareness, exercises to sense energy currents flowing through my apartment. Explanations of how moonlight affected supernatural beings differently depending on lunar phase. Warning signs that would indicate other entities approaching our space. Imagine threads of light connecting all things, he instructed, standing behind me as I faced the window, moonlight bathing us both. Not seeing with eyes, but with the space between thoughts. His proximity sent electricity dancing across my skin, the tether between us humming with awareness. Under his guidance, I began perceiving subtle energetic patterns, eddies of power swirling around certain objects, faint luminous trails where he regularly walked, the grimoire pulsing with rhythms that matched neither my heartbeat nor his, but some third, older cadence. External pressures mounted when viewers identified my building from background details in videos, architectural elements visible through my window, distinctive hallway carpeting glimpsed during a package retrieval, discussion threads planning pilgrimages to my location proliferated, forcing consideration of relocation for safety. Thorne's protective instincts intensified proportionally to these perceived threats. He positioned himself between me and the door when deliveries arrived, reacting to strangers' voices in the hallway with predatory alertness. When I ordered food delivery, he manifested invisibly beside me as I accepted the package, his presence detectable only through the delivery person's inexplicable shiver and hasty retreat. Our connection deepened in unexpected ways. I discovered I could sense Thorne's location within the apartment even when he was invisible, feeling his presence like a warm pressure against my consciousness. Emotional bleed-through occurred with increasing frequency. His hunger, his curiosity, his ancient grief occasionally washing through me without warning. Most intimate were the night terrors, fragments of Thorne's memories infiltrating my dreams, running through moonlit forests, heart pounding with exhilaration, senses overwhelmed by scents and sounds no human should perceive. The first transformation, bones breaking and reforming, skin stretching beyond endurance, the transcendent agony of becoming something greater and terrible. Centuries of watching helplessly from within the book as owners lived and died, some never sensing his presence, others driven to madness by his whispers, the relentless parade of human lives passing while he remained unchanging, bound alone. I would wake from these gasping, tears streaming down my face, to find him watching from the corner of my bedroom, expression unreadable in the darkness. "You should not see such things," he would say, neither apology nor comfort. "Then stop showing me," I would reply, knowing he couldn't control the leakage between our minds any more than I could. For my follow-up video, I prepared carefully scripted responses about my paranormal experience, balancing viewer engagement against personal safety. The filming setup was meticulously arranged to reveal nothing of consequence. Neutral background, controlled lighting, professional delivery.
I want to thank everyone for their concern after my last live stream. I began, scholarly composure firmly in place. I'm continuing to research what happened and will share my findings when I have something conclusive to report. Thorne stood directly behind me throughout the recording, invisible to the camera, but radiating that peculiar pressure that had become as familiar as my own heartbeat. I felt his attention on my words, his amusement at my careful omissions,
His approval of my strategic vagueness. What neither of us anticipated was the shadow. When viewers received the video, those who adjusted brightness settings to analyze background details discovered something impossible, a distinctly lupine silhouette cast against my wall, though nothing visible could have created it. The screenshot circulated with viral velocity, my careful messaging undermined by evidence I hadn't known existed. Occult Scribe 43, enhance the shadow. It's not human. Look at the ears. The snout. Paranormal hunter. Confirmed genuine. No digital manipulation. Whatever is with her, it's not human. The real Silver Fang? She is not alone, and neither are they. The digital realm pulsed with renewed hunger, electronic eyes turning toward my sanctuary with voracious attention. In the quiet of my apartment, Thorne examined the circulating image with thoughtful calculation. "They see only shadow," he observed, "not substance. Shadows reveal form," I countered, watching the view count rise with sick fascination. He smiled then, a predator pleased with unexpected development. "Let them come hunting shadows," he said, teeth gleaming in the blue light of my screen. While substance grows stronger in darkness, they cannot penetrate. Outside my window, the moon waned toward darkness. The grimoire silver wolves gleaming with anticipation of that perfect night when neither moon nor mortal eyes would witness what might finally fully emerge. Chapter 5. The First Moon. I traced the waxing curve on my lunar calendar with trembling fingers, each mark bringing us closer to the inevitable. The moon had swelled night by night, a celestial timepiece counting down to transformation. My academic mind tried to frame this anticipation clinically, a documented phenomenon approaching its apex. But my body knew better, humming with awareness beyond rational thought. Thorne watched me from across the room, his form now substantial enough to cast proper shadows, to displace air when he moved, to leave impressions in the cushions where he sat. Mirror reflections captured him fully now. No longer the shifting phantom of our early days, but a solid presence with weight and consequence. Electronics faltered in his proximity, my phone battery draining without explanation, television channels dissolving into static when he passed, the microwave clock resetting itself to midnight, regardless of correction. "You fear what comes," he observed, voice rumbling like distant thunder. Not a question, but an acknowledgement. I closed the calendar with deliberate calm. "I'm concerned about variables I can't control." His laugh held no humor. Transformation permits no control, for either of us. The conversation that followed carried the weight of ancient ritual. Thorne detailed what the full moon would bring, not merely increased strength, but complete manifestation, including physical transformation, something he hadn't experienced corporally since being bound to the grimoire centuries ago. The clinical detachment in his explanation barely masked something wilder underneath, anticipation that bordered on reverence. "You will secure all exits," he instructed, mapping my apartment with predatory assessment. "Remove anything fragile or valuable. Prepare meat, raw, substantial quantities, and you must remain present." "Present?" I echoed, scholarly composure slipping. "While you transform into a creature from medieval nightmare?" His eyes flashed gold momentarily. "The tether between us stabilizes my nature. Your absence would remove that anchor." Translation: without me, he might lose whatever humanity he retained in wolf form. Not a comforting thought. My scholarly instincts resurfaced through fear. If I must witness a supernatural transformation, I would document it properly. Cameras were positioned unobtrusively around my living room, angled to capture maximum coverage while minimizing risk of damage. My laptop was secured in the bedroom, ready to record audio. Notebooks were prepared with observation frameworks. If terror found me, at least it would find me methodical. Thorne spent the day before full moon reinforcing magical boundaries. I watched in fascination as he traced intricate patterns along baseboards and windowsills, movements too precise to be improvised, too fluid to be entirely human. The sigils glowed briefly when completed, before fading into apparent invisibility, though I could still sense their presence as subtle pressure changes when passing their boundaries. "They will contain my energy during transformation," he explained. "Prevent others from sensing the power surge. Protect you from the worst of my nature." The blood ritual wasn't optional. Thorne mixed the small amount I provided with herbs and water collected from the previous night's moonlight, creating a solution with the metallic scent of pennies and earth. This he applied to specific points throughout the apartment: doorways, corners, the space surrounding my bed. When I questioned this, his explanation was unsettlingly matter-of-fact. "Recognition markers," he said. "My wolf self will identify you as pack rather than prey." As twilight approached, the grimoire began responding to the impending moonrise. Silver inlay that had remained dormant since the summoning now pulsed with rhythmic light, keeping time with an inaudible heartbeat. Pages turned without human intervention, displaying transformation illustrations inked in what I now recognized as blood rather than mundane pigment. Temperature dropped around the book itself, creating a pocket of winter within summer warmth. My digital life required maintenance despite supernatural developments. I created a pre-recorded video explaining my absence, a carefully crafted story about research retreats and technical upgrades, scheduling it to post during the full moon. The comment section filled predictably with disappointment and conspiracy. Occult Scribe 43, classic sellout move. Gets famous from genuine supernatural event, then disappears when it's time to deliver proof. Paranormal Hunter. Government agents probably got to her. They suppress all legitimate evidence. The real Silver Fang. The wise hunter knows when to lower her weapon. The forest watches those who watch it. Moonrise painted my apartment in silver when it came. I had secured the space according to Thorne's instructions. Furniture pushed against walls to create central clearance. Valuable items locked away. Windows covered with blackout curtains that still admitted the moon's influence while preventing external observation. Raw meat waited in covered dishes, the copper scent drawing Thorne's attention with increasing frequency as daylight faded. He stood in the center of the room when it began. Moonlight streaming through the single uncovered window to bathe him in spectral illumination. The transformation started subtly, skin rippling like water disturbed by underwater currents, eyes transitioning from amber to luminous gold, the air around him charging with electricity that raised hair on arms and necks. "Stay back," he managed through clenched teeth, voice deepening into registers that human vocal cords shouldn't produce. "Don't approach until I acknowledge you." Then language abandoned him entirely as his body surrendered to reconfiguration. I had prepared myself intellectually for transformation. Nothing could have prepared me for its reality. Bones realigned with audible cracks that echoed through the apartment, joints dislocating and reforming in configurations human anatomy couldn't support. Musculature shifted beneath skin that stretched to accommodate new forms. The painful process extracting growls that vibrated the very air between us. His hands elongated into clawed appendages, elegant in their deadly precision. His spine arched with sickening fluidity, reshaping itself into something that supported neither fully upright human posture nor quadrupedal animal stance, but something ancient that combined both. The transformation affected my apartment as profoundly as it affected Thorne. Lights flickered violently before surrendering to darkness, leaving only moonlight and the grimoire's silver glow for illumination. Electronic devices emitted death wails of feedback before shorting into silence. Temperature plummeted until breath became visible as silver mist, window glass vibrating with frequencies too low for human ears, but perceptible as pressure against eardrums. When completion finally arrived, what stood before me was neither the man I had begun to know nor the simple wolf of modern cinema. Ancient Baltic lore had manifested in my living room, the upright hybrid combining human intelligence with lupine power. Thorne stood taller in this form, body covered in dark fur with silver streaks matching his human hair. The face balanced human features with lupine structure, elongated jaw filled with teeth designed for rending, eyes larger and entirely gold, ears positioned higher and mobile with every sound. His chest expanded with each breath, musculature rippling beneath fur with power no human frame could contain. Most unsettling was the sense of ancient presence, intensified beyond previous manifestation. This was no longer a being adapted to modern constraints, but something primal, witnessing contemporary reality through eyes that had seen millennia. The moment of assessment stretched into painful duration. Transformed Thorne scented the apartment with methodical thoroughness, nostrils flaring, head tilting to track sounds imperceptible to human ears. Movement, combining animal grace with predatory purpose. When his attention finally locked onto me, the intensity transcended our previous interactions, reducing me to essential components: heartbeat, breath, blood pulsing beneath fragile skin. I remained motionless, scholarly observation warring with primal fear. "Thorne," I whispered, name offered as talisman against instinct. He circled me without approaching. Movements betraying conflict between human consciousness and wolf instinct. Occasionally, he shook his massive head as if clearing unwanted thoughts, responding to my continued soft speech with confused whines. The blood ritual markers placed throughout the apartment seemed to orient him when confusion peaked, his nostrils flaring at their scent before returning to deliberate circling. The breakthrough, when it came, arrived with supernatural grace. "Ellie," he growled. Voice deeper and rougher, but recognizably his. The single word carried triumph, proof that human consciousness remained despite physical transformation, establishing new trust between us. What followed was demonstration rather than conversation. Thorne moved through my apartment with impossible speed, appearing beside the kitchen counter one moment, at the far window the next, movement too fluid for eyes to track. Strength manifested in casual display, fingers denting the metal refrigerator door when opened, wooden chair arms splintering under gentle pressure. His transformed senses proved most impressive. He described with perfect accuracy people moving in apartments floors away, conversations occurring behind multiple walls, scents telling stories of activities hours past, in moments of lucidity between displays of power. He shared fragments of memory, transformations experienced centuries before, running with others of his kind through forests long since destroyed, ritualistic hunts honoring gods forgotten by modern worship. The freedom he described, power unleashed beneath ancient moons, the brotherhood of pack moving as single organism through primal wilderness, made our apartment confinement seem particularly cruel. The connection between us intensified beyond previous experience. Sensory bleed-through that had manifested as occasional glimpses now flooded without warning, moments where my vision shifted to include spectrums beyond human perception, scents suddenly carrying complex stories rather than simple identifications, sounds revealing layers of information previously inaccessible. Most disturbing were the emotional transferences, predatory hunger washing through me with mouth-watering intensity. Territorial possessiveness, casting familiar surroundings in terms of defense rather than comfort. The feral joy of strength without constraint momentarily possessing my human limbs. These glimpses into Thorne's consciousness revealed what I had summoned more clearly than any academic text. Not simply a werewolf, but a being who existed permanently between worlds, for whom transformation was not curse, but completion. As the night progressed, containment became increasingly challenging. Thorne's initial controlled demonstrations gave way to growing agitation, restless pacing, claws scoring wooden floorboards despite attempts at restraint, occasional howls of frustration quickly muffled but still audible enough to concern neighbors. He tested the magical boundaries with increasing force, pressing against invisible barriers that rippled with silver light when challenged. When pounding came at the walls, neighbors disturbed by sounds impossible to disguise as normal, Thorne's reaction proved revealing. Despite his agitation, he immediately positioned himself between me and the door, body lowering into defensive posture, rumbling growls warning away potential threats. Even transformed, his protective instinct remained primary, superseding personal discomfort. Dawn approached with palpable relief. Transformation reversed with the moon setting, painful process of bones reshaping themselves, fur receding into skin, lupine features giving way to human structure. Thorne's suffering during this regression manifested in stifled groans and trembling limbs, sweat beating across his body as human consciousness fully reasserted itself over animal instinct. When completion finally arrived, he collapsed in human form, physically drained beyond previous exhaustion. Mentally clear, but emotionally raw, I approached cautiously, Scholar's objectivity abandoned in favor of basic human concern, offering water which he accepted with trembling hands. It was more controlled than expected, he confessed, voice hoarse from transformation. Our bond stabilized the shift. Future moons may prove less dangerous. Later, with Thorne sleeping in exhausted human form nearby, I reviewed transformation footage on my camera, scientific curiosity temporarily satisfied, but ethical questions multiplying. What could responsibly be shared publicly? What should remain protected? The boundaries between academic documentation and exploitation had never seemed more relevant. The grimoire provided its own commentary on our night's experience. Pages that had displayed transformation illustrations now revealed new text, elegant script appearing where blank spaces had existed before, suggesting the full moon had unlocked another layer of the book's secrets. The silver wolves along the binding seemed more dimensional than before, catching light with enhanced brilliance, their ruby eyes regarding me with intelligence that transcended decoration. I traced newly visible words with reverent fingers, translation forming in my mind without conscious effort, our strengthening connection apparently extending to the grimoire itself. The first moon reveals true nature. The second moon strengthens bonds. The third moon opens paths between worlds. Choose wisely, bookkeeper, which worlds you wish to walk. Outside my window, the waning moon continued its eternal cycle, already beginning its journey toward our next transformation, and whatever doorways it might open between his world and mine. Chapter 6, Modern Wolf. Morning light crept across the floor to find Thorne sprawled in my reading chair, his formerly semi-transparent form now undeniably solid. The night's transformation had extracted its price. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and exhaustion had carved new lines into his face, but awareness burned bright in his gaze. Whatever else the full moon had taken, it had given clarity in return. The manifestation is complete, he announced without preamble, examining his hands with scientific curiosity. I am more fully in your world now. Evidence of his new solidity accumulated throughout the day. Footprints remained visible in the plush carpet of my bedroom when he crossed it. No longer the vague impressions of before, but proper depressions. The bathroom mirror captured his reflection without the previous shimmer of uncertainty. When he lifted books from shelves, pages no longer rippled as though moved by spectral breeze, but responded to normal pressure. Most tellingly, he triggered the motion detector on my digital thermostat when passing, something that had never occurred during his phantom phase. My digital life expanded in inverse proportion to my physical isolation. Channel metrics reached staggering heights. The scheduled video during my absence generated more views than my entire previous catalog combined. Comments multiplied like digital spores, theories propagating across platforms faster than I could track them. Occult Scribe 43. The grimoire is clearly affecting her. Watch the shadows in the background of her latest video. They move independently of light sources. Paranormal Hunter. Spectrographic analysis of her audio reveals subharmonics consistent with non-human vocalizations layered beneath her voice. The real Silver Fang. She walks between worlds now. The book is merely a door. With newfound clarity came calculated strategy. I filmed carefully edited material, showcasing research into the grimoire while keeping Thorne deliberately out of frame, building narrative tension without revealing dangerous truths. The balance required precision, enough authenticity to maintain credibility with discerning viewers, enough obscurity to protect what truly haunted my apartment. Thorne adapted to corporality with endearing inconsistency. The refrigerator concept delighted him beyond reason, opening and closing the door repeatedly to watch the light activate, placing his hand inside to feel temperature change, marveling at food preservation without smoke or salt. Yet shower controls confounded him completely, resulting in alternating bursts of scalding and freezing water accompanied by curses in languages dead for centuries. Electric lights remained objects of suspicious reverence, switched on with ceremonial care as though expecting divine retribution for such casual manipulation of illumination. "Your world privileges convenience over meaning," he observed, watching me operate the microwave. "Everything instant, nothing sacred," says the man who just ate an entire frozen pizza in 3 minutes, I countered. His clothing situation required immediate attention. The archaic garments that had manifested with him, leather and rough-spun fabric of clearly ancient design, maintained remarkable integrity, but hardly suited public interaction. Online ordering solved the practical problem while creating unexpected entertainment as Thorne evaluated modern fashion with withering historical perspective. "These are not garments, but costumes," he declared, examining the first delivery. "No proper construction, no natural materials. Your era has forgotten that clothing should honor both body and elements." He rejected synthetics entirely, selected natural fibers with visceral preference, and insisted on keeping his original leather accessories despite their decrepit state. The final wardrobe represented pragmatic compromise, modern enough for public presentation, but incorporating elements that honored his aesthetic sensibilities. Culinary exploration revealed unexpected joy. Thorne approached modern food with supernatural sensory capacity, experiencing flavors with intensity no human palate could match. Rare steak reduced him to reverent silence. Chocolate elicited almost inappropriate sounds of pleasure, while processed foods triggered amusing disgust. Potato chips being particularly offensive, compressed nothing flavored with artificial everything. "Your era may have forgotten true magic," he conceded after discovering raspberry sorbet, "but this cold sweetness approaches miraculous." Language adaptation accelerated beyond reasonable expectation. Within days of his first transformation, archaic phrasings gave way to fluent modern English, occasional linguistic slips the only evidence of his temporal displacement. He consumed my library with voracious intellect, particularly drawn to poetry that echoed ancient bardic traditions. Finding him absorbed in Yeats or Rilke became common, his expression softening when verse approached the rhythms of sagas long forgotten by all but him. Physical boundaries required new testing. The apartment threshold, once an impassable barrier causing painful distortion when approached, now permitted crossing with only minor resistance. Yet the grimoire's influence remained absolute. Attempts to travel beyond certain distance resulted in a painful pulling sensation Thorne described as having soul stretched too thin over physical form. Our first venture outside the apartment came at 3 a.m., when the building hallway stood empty of potential witnesses. Thorne moved with predatory awareness, fingertips trailing along walls, nostrils flaring to catalog scents imperceptible to human senses. His natural night vision rendered lighting unnecessary, allowing us to navigate in darkness that seemed absolute to me, but apparently offered detailed panorama to him. "I smell 17 distinct humans who passed today," he murmured, head tilting as he processed information. 3 with illness, 1 carrying gunmetal scent, 2 who share dwelling space. He pointed precisely toward apartments whose occupants matched these descriptions, mapping the building's inhabitants through sensory data I couldn't begin to perceive. The exhilaration of expanded territory manifested physically, his movements becoming more fluid, posture straightening as though relieved of invisible weight, energy radiating from him in nearly visible waves. For the first time, I glimpsed how confinement had constrained not merely his body, but his essential nature. Practicality demanded preparation for eventual public interaction. We crafted a cover identity: distant cousin from Europe, visiting scholar assisting my research, plausible explanation for his occasional strange behaviors, and limited technological understanding. The narrative required extensive coaching, Thorne's natural pride occasionally bristling at the need for deception. "I am neither ashamed nor hiding," he objected during particularly intensive rehearsal. "You literally emerged from an ancient book after centuries of imprisonment," I reminded him. "The modern world isn't equipped for that reality." Media training presented unexpected challenges. Thorne's inability to appear normally in digital media manifested consistently. Photographs showed empty space where he stood. Video captured distorted shadows or blurring where his form should be. Audio recordings registered his voice, but attenuated and fragmented as though traveling through difficult medium. Only analog technologies, film cameras, mechanical recording devices, captured him with any accuracy, creating practical difficulties for my continued documentation. "The digital realm exists too far from my natural state," he explained when I questioned this phenomenon. "Your technology captures light reflected from physical objects. I remain partly energy, partly matter, a contradiction your devices cannot reconcile. Personal boundaries between us evolved with subtle inevitability. Proximity generated tangible energy, the air between us seeming to compress and vibrate when we occupied shared space. Accidental touches caused visible electrical reaction, small blue sparks jumping between skin contact. Growing awareness of each other's physical presence transcended normal human interaction, creating constant consciousness of the other's location, even when rooms apart. My channel content evolved to incorporate encoded information, discussing theoretical werewolf traits that perfectly matched Thorne's actual abilities. Analyzing transformation myths that aligned with his experience, creating narratives with dual meanings. Viewers with supernatural knowledge might recognize truth beneath academic presentation, while skeptics would see only scholarly exploration of mythology. The comment section transformed from audience into community. Regular viewers developing elaborate theories about my research, some approaching uncomfortable proximity to truth. Others provided valuable historical context that genuinely assisted my understanding of the grimoire. Baltic folklore experts offering translation assistance, historians identifying potential origins for specific binding rituals, practicing pagans suggesting protective measures that Thorne later confirmed held practical validity. Silverfang's messages acquired increasing specificity, suggesting protective symbols Thorne recognized immediately, warning about upcoming celestial alignments that would affect his energy patterns, implying personal knowledge of supernatural phenomena beyond theoretical understanding. Their identity remained mysterious, but their information proved consistently reliable. "This one knows," Thorne confirmed after reading a particularly detailed message about lunar influence on binding spells. not as one who studies, but as one who experiences. Historical reconciliation occupied quiet moments between practical adaptations. Thorne processed centuries of change with complex emotion. Grief over his lost homeland, fascination with humanity's technological evolution, philosophical debates about whether human nature had fundamentally transformed despite external progress. "Your machines grow more miraculous," he observed while watching aircraft trails cross the evening sky. "Yet your wars remain as brutal. Your divisions as profound, your fears as primitive as when I first walked the earth. You have changed everything except yourselves." Supernatural abilities manifested beyond transformation. Even in human form, Thorne demonstrated strength exceeding normal parameters, bending metal with casual pressure, lifting furniture with single-handed ease. His capacity to sense emotional states proved disconcertingly accurate, particularly regarding deception. When anger or protective instincts triggered strong emotion, small objects occasionally moved without physical contact. Pens rolling across desk surfaces, books falling from shelves, lights fluctuating in response to his mood. "Magic is merely focused intention," he explained when I questioned these phenomena. "Emotion provides the energy, will provides the direction. Your world forgot the connection between them." Territory expansion progressed cautiously. A brief nighttime excursion to the building's rooftop worked significant boundary extension, Thorne experiencing open sky for the first time in centuries, his sensory system overwhelmed by urban panorama. The moment of pure joy that followed manifested as partial transformation, eyes glowing gold, fingers elongating slightly toward claws, canines extending visibly behind parted lips. The partial shift both frightened and captivated me, dangerous yet beautiful. Reminder that human appearance remained merely the surface of what he truly was. Practical magic entered our routine through careful instruction. Thorne taught basic magical defenses with pragmatic detachment, symbols drawn in specific sequences, verbalized intentions strengthened by visualization, proper use of natural elements for protection. His approach stripped away modern occult theatrics in favor of functional techniques. Magic as practical skill rather than mystical performance. "Intent matters more than tools," he emphasized, watching me practice protective sigils. "A single line drawn with purpose holds more power than elaborate ritual performed without conviction." Dreams provided unexpected connection. We discovered shared nocturnal landscapes, both experiencing identical forest settings while physically separated by sleep, suggesting our magical bond had strengthened beyond conscious interaction. In these shared dreams, I moved through ancient woodlands with supernatural awareness, while Thorne appeared more fully wolf than his waking form permitted, both of us existing in liminal space between our natural states. Identity questions surfaced during quiet moments. Thorne experienced increasing dissonance between his ancient origins and growing adaptation to modernity, unsure whether he remained the same being who was bound centuries ago or had evolved into something neither fully then nor now. "Am I still what I was?" he asked one evening, voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "How much humanity have I retained through imprisonment? Is freedom from the book possible after so much time, or would separation now destroy what remains of me?" I had no answers, only more questions about our intertwined fates. The shift between us occurred so gradually it might have gone unnoticed if not for its increasing physical manifestation. Glances lingered beyond necessary communication. Awareness of proximity heightened beyond practical consideration. Thorne's stance shifted subtly when delivery people approached, body angling between me and potential intrusion with instinctive possessiveness. My research increasingly focused on understanding the binding magic without breaking connection entirely, seeking balance between freedom and preservation of what had developed between us. These changes manifested visibly during filming sessions. As I recorded new content explaining my discovery that the grimoire contained binding magics affecting supernatural beings, Thorne sat just beyond camera range, our fingers nearly touching on the desk's surface. Light radiated subtly where our energy fields connected, a faint silver glow visible only in certain angles. Physical manifestation of something neither of us fully understood, but both increasingly acknowledged. The grimoire appears to function as both prison and portal, I explained to the camera with careful academic detachment, binding supernatural entities while simultaneously creating conduits between realms. The theoretical implications suggest symbiotic relationships rather than simple containment. Thorne's fingers shifted imperceptibly closer to mine, the silver light between us brightening momentarily. The camera's small indicator light flickered in response, digital technology struggling to process energy that existed beyond its parameters. Relationships that transform both the bound and the binder, I continued, scholarly tone maintaining perfect composure while awareness of his proximity hummed through every nerve, creating connections that transcend conventional understanding of separation between beings. Later, reviewing the footage, I discovered the camera had captured something unexpected, not Thorne himself, but the shadow he cast across my desk. Unlike normal shadows, this one appeared almost three-dimensional, edges defined with preternatural sharpness, form suggesting neither fully human nor animal outline, but something balanced precisely between worlds, just as we now existed, neither fully separate nor completely merged, both transformed by connection neither had anticipated, together occupying the threshold between what was and what might yet become. Chapter 7. The hunter danger announces itself in subtle ways to those attuned to its frequency. I felt it first as a prickling awareness along my spine, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against my consciousness. The curtains in my study shifted without breeze, air pressure changing as though the apartment itself held its breath. Before rational thought could dismiss the sensation as imagination, Thorne materialized beside me, body coiled with predatory alertness. "Someone watches," he confirmed, voice barely above whisper. Not merely curious, hunting. The confirmation chilled more deeply than uncertainty had. My sanctuary had become hunting ground, my digital footprints leading predators to my door. The email arrived that evening. Anonymous address, subject line containing only coordinates that, when wrapped, showed my exact location. The attached image revealed the grimoire's distinctive cover. Silver wolf inlay rendered with photographic precision, impossible without first-hand observation. I represent a collector of significant artifacts who has taken interest in your recent acquisition. The grimoire in your possession belongs to a Baltic collection my client has spent decades assembling. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation for its return to proper keeping. Various methods of acquisition remain available to us, but we prefer civilized resolution when possible. Professional language barely masked the threat pulsing beneath politeness. Thorne read over my shoulder, a growl building in his chest that seemed to vibrate the very air between us. "Collectors," he spat, the word transformed into something venomous. "Predators who hunt what they cannot understand." Violation shifted from digital to physical days later. Returning from grocery shopping, I found my apartment door slightly ajar, the gap microscopic but unmistakable to someone who lived alone and secured her dwelling with ritualistic precision. Nothing was obviously missing, yet wrongness permeated the space like invisible smoke. Thorne entered before me, nostrils flaring as he catalogued information imperceptible to human senses. Male, expensive cologne masking natural scent, something metallic. His eyes flashed momentary gold. Weapons. The grimoire responded to the intrusion with autonomous agitation. Placed on the table, its pages flipped rapidly without human intervention. Silver inlay pulsing with cold light that cast stark shadows across the room. New text appeared in the margins, spidery script crawling across previously blank spaces, forming protection invocations in ancient Baltic dialect. Blood has always attracted sharks, Thorne observed, tracing the new symbols with reverent fingertips. The book's awakening calls to those who hunt power. Such people exist in all eras. Those who collect what they cannot create, who control what they fear, who destroy what they cannot possess. His expression darkened with memory. I have encountered their kind before. Some sought to destroy what they couldn't comprehend. Others to harness power never meant for human hands. Most dangerous are those who combine modern resources with ancient knowledge. Silverfang's message arrived unusual urgency, bypassing my regular social platforms to appear directly in my secured email. The hunter has your scent. Alexander Voss has collected Baltic artifacts for 3 decades. The Wolf Grimoire completes his northern set. He began with money and charm. Recently, those who refuse him disappear. Relocate immediately. He knows what you've awakened. The attached photograph showed a distinguished man in his 50s, silver at his temples accentuating rather than diminishing commanding presence. Tailored suit suggesting wealth, worn with easy familiarity. Smile revealing perfect teeth and absolutely nothing of his true nature. One hand rested possessively on an antique display case containing what appeared to be runic tablets. Research confirmed Silverfang's warning. Voss maintained a carefully curated public persona, antiquities dealer specializing in Northern European artifacts. Gallery openings attended by minor celebrities and major academics. Charitable foundation supporting preservation of European cultural heritage through suspiciously vague initiatives. Beneath this veneer, disturbing patterns emerged. Museums reported thefts after declining his generous purchase offers. Scholars who questioned his authentication methods experienced mysterious career setbacks. Previous owners of pieces in his collection had unsettling tendencies toward disappearance or death under circumstances that invited no thorough investigation. Most telling was the pattern of acquisition. Voss consistently pursued artifacts with genuine occult significance rather than merely historical value. His collection focused on items associated with transformation, binding magic, and barriers between worlds, suggesting knowledge beyond academic interest. We must evaluate our position, Thorne declared, after absorbing this information. The apartment is compromised, yet my connection to the grimoire limits our movement. Physical confrontation would be unwise given his resources and our constraints. I need to create a distraction, I decided, turning to the one weapon uniquely mine, my digital platform. The resulting video suggested imminent travel for grimoire research, mentioning incorrect locations, showing packed bags and travel documents, creating digital alibi while maintaining viewer engagement. Comments flooded in with location suggestions and offers of local assistance, generating enough noise to potentially obscure our actual plans. Magical fortification accompanied physical preparation. Thorne strengthened wards around the apartment with increasingly complex sigils drawn in mixture of ash and his own blood. teaching me to activate them with specific phrases that felt ancient yet natural on my tongue. "These won't prevent physical intrusion," he cautioned, "but they'll mask supernatural energy signatures. If he's using magical detection rather than mundane surveillance, this may buy time." We converted my once scholarly apartment into defensive territory. Furniture strategically arranged to create choke points, improvised weapons placed within casual reach, escape route planned through maintenance access revealed by careful study of building plans. Thorne's heightened senses became our early warning system, his awareness extending well beyond human limitations to monitor approaching threats. The first direct confrontation arrived via innocent-seeming courier, young, bored delivery person bearing elegant package wrapped in heavy cream paper. Before I could accept it, Thorne tensed visibly, a low growl escaping his throat. "Deception," he whispered. "Something wrong." Inside lay an antique silver dagger nestled in black velvet, its handle intricately carved with runic symbols matching those in the grimoire. The accompanying note bore elegant handwriting on heavy stationery. "Miss Blackwood, your academic pursuits have captured my attention. The Baltic grimoire currently in your possession represents a significant historical artifact worthy of proper preservation. I propose civilized discussion about our mutual interests. The enclosed piece demonstrates my sincere appreciation for northern antiquities." Thorne's reaction to the silver proximity proved dramatic, skin blistering even without direct contact, pain evident in the rigid set of his shoulders. The dagger represented not merely threat, but test, confirming Voss knew exactly what I had summoned. The silver content's reaction to Thorne's presence revealed critical information about his manifestation strength. "He hunts with knowledge," Thorne observed grimly, moving away from the silver. "The weapon serves multiple purposes: demonstration of his resources, assessment of my vulnerability, and promise of what awaits resistance." Our counter-strategy emerged from necessity rather than preference. We would use my digital platform as weapon. Deliberate misinformation about the grimoire's powers, suggestion of dangerous consequences for improper handling, truth hidden within plausible occult explanations to dissuade Voss without revealing our true knowledge. Magical preparation intensified alongside digital strategy. Thorne guided me through exercises strengthening our supernatural connection, meditation focusing on the tether binding us, practice sensing his presence at increasing distances, sharing impressions without verbal communication. "The bond flows both ways," he explained, fingers lightly touching my temples as we sat facing each other in moonlight. "You've experienced my memories through dreams. Now learn to access the connection consciously." Under his guidance, I began perceiving the world through expanded awareness, moments of seeing through his eyes, catching emotional impressions without words, maintaining connection even when physically separated by walls or distance. The sensation resembled having additional neural pathways suddenly activated, processing information through senses I hadn't known existed. The video we crafted walked a dangerous line between revelation and protection. I presented scholarly analysis of theoretical curses protecting artifacts like the grimoire, discussing historical accounts of collectors suffering mysterious ailments after improper handling, analyzing protective bindings common in Baltic magical practice, embedding actual warnings within academic framework. According to folklore, certain grimoires containing binding spells create sympathetic connections with their handlers, I explained to the camera, voice steady despite the truth underlying my words. The boundary between researcher and researched becomes permeable, potentially transferring conditions from bound entities to human possessors. Voss's response arrived with elegant precision, comment under transparent pseudonym, combining innocent questions with phrases revealing deep knowledge of Baltic magic. To casual viewers, it appeared merely scholarly interest. To us, it represented acknowledgement of our strategy and countermove in our increasingly dangerous game. Fascinating research. Have you considered the Livonian binding variations? Their sympathetic transfer often affected blood composition in handlers, silver sensitivity being particularly noteworthy. Perhaps examining your grimoire under ultraviolet light might reveal hidden markings related to these effects. The message contained multiple layers: confirmation he recognized Thorne as werewolf, suggestion he knew the grimoire's specific origin, and implied threat regarding silver sensitivity. Each sentence revealed dangerous knowledge packaged in scholarly inquiry, evidence of sophisticated surveillance accumulated rapidly. Thorne's heightened senses identified observation devices we would have otherwise missed. Tiny camera disguised as smoke detector in the hallway outside my apartment. Directional microphone aimed at our windows from building across street. Brief electromagnetic disturbances suggesting periodic scanning of our electronic devices. He employs both technology and magic, Thorne observed, expression darkening. Most dangerous combination. He watches through multiple realities. Escalation arrived in seemingly innocuous package, bubble-wrapped cylinder containing single sheet of ancient vellum that appeared blank under normal illumination. When viewed by moonlight, however, Baltic text materialized in silver-blue luminescence. The wolf returns to its trap eventually. The grimoire binds more than beasts. Your scholarly curiosity has awakened old magic better left dormant. Possession transfers easily, from book to beast to blood. Choose surrender before consequences multiply. The vellum demonstrated Voss possessed not merely collection instinct, but genuine magical knowledge. The text utilizing sympathetic properties that responded specifically to our energetic signatures, impossible without considerable skill and resources. An unexpected potential advantage emerged through digital channels. Message from prominent supernatural documentary producer offering significant payment for exclusive interview about the grimoire and the unexplained phenomena from my original live stream. While fraught with obvious risks, this presented possibility for public protection through visibility Voss might wish to avoid. A trap can function in both directions, Thorne mused. Studying the producer's detailed offer. If properly baited, the interview agreement included specific conditions: public location with multiple exits, audience presence providing witnesses, numerous recording devices, creating documentation, and arrangements allowing us to potentially expose Voss's intentions should he attempt intervention. The grimoire would accompany us, carefully secured but present enough to potentially draw our hunter into revealing himself. During preparation, linguistic patterns in Silverfang's messages triggered scholarly recognition. Comparing their phrasing with historical texts revealed consistent grammatical structures and idioms from specific Baltic dialect, one contemporary with Thorne's original time period. This suggested our mysterious ally was likely another supernatural entity who had escaped Voss's collection or otherwise encountered him previously. The night before our public appearance found us in final preparation, me practicing answers that revealed nothing substantive while appearing educational, Thorne testing the maximum distance he could maintain from the grimoire without painful consequences. The book would need to accompany us, creating vulnerability but also necessary bait for our strategic gamble. "How far?" I asked as he paced the hallway outside my apartment, grimoire remaining on my desk inside. 27 meters before discomfort begins, he reported, returning a fluid grace. 43 before pain becomes significant. Beyond 50, the pulling becomes unbearable. The limitations defined our operational parameters. The grimoire must remain within this radius during the interview, close enough for Thorne's protection, yet not so obvious as to reveal its true significance to casual observers. As midnight approached, we stood before my living room window, the waning moon casting silver shadows across our faces. Thorne's hand found mine. fingers intertwining with deliberate intent rather than accidental contact. The electric sensation that had once startled now felt familiar, almost necessary, connection manifesting physically between beings no longer entirely separate. "He will come," Thorne said softly, eyes reflecting moonlight with predatory luminescence. "Hunters cannot resist bait that walks willingly into open." "Is this foolishness?" I asked, scholarly confidence momentarily wavering. "Are we inviting destruction?" His smile contained centuries of survival against impossible odds, predator's confidence balanced with ancient wisdom. "The greatest trap is the one your prey believes they have set for you." Between us on the table, the grimoire's silver wolves seemed to shift slightly in the moonlight, ruby eyes gleaming with anticipation of the hunt to come. Not merely Voss hunting us, but us hunting him in turn. Predator and prey roles blurring as they always had in nature's most dangerous games. Tomorrow we would deliberately step into light, drawing our hunter from shadows, gambling our safety against his arrogance. The probability matrix featured numerous paths to failure, few to success. Yet something primal and certain resided in the connection between us. Ancient magic meeting modern strategy, creating possibility where mere reason saw only risk. In the darkness of my apartment, transformed from scholarly sanctuary to fortress, Thorne and I prepared to face the hunter who believed us merely prey, unaware that wolves hunt most effectively when seemingly cornered. Chapter 8. Breaking the Curse. The university auditorium transformed under the weight of anticipation. Gothic architecture's solemn grace now electrified by modern expectations. Rows of seats filled with a curious amalgamation of humanity, wide-eyed subscribers clutching notebooks, skeptical academics with arms firmly crossed, occult enthusiasts wearing their beliefs like fragrant perfume. Camera equipment formed a technological perimeter. Operators adjusting settings with mechanical precision. Security personnel stationed at entrances conveyed this was no ordinary academic presentation. The grimoire rested in a specialized container on the podium, appearing to casual observers as merely an antiquarian's lockbox, but constructed according to Thorne's exacting specifications. Layers of elder wood, lined with herbs and inscribed with protective sigils, formed a mundane-seeming fortress for the supernatural artifact. I had positioned it carefully, close enough for Thorne to maintain connection without revealing their symbiosis, far enough from the audience to prevent any unexpected energy transference. Thorne himself occupied a strategically ambiguous role, introduced as my research assistant from a Baltic university. His contemporary clothing, natural fibers only, despite current fashion trends, transforming him into a plausible academic while accommodating his visceral aversion to synthetic materials. He stood at precisely calculated distance from the grimoire, supernatural aspects contained beneath veneer of scholarly composure. Only I could see the predatory awareness in his posture, the constant sensory monitoring that cataloged every sound, scent, and movement within the auditorium. "It is my honor to introduce Ellie Blackwood," Dr. Marisa Chen began, her reputation in paranormal research lending crucial credibility to the proceedings. Her work represents a fascinating intersection of historical scholarship and unexplained phenomena, contextualizing digital age experiences within centuries of documented supernatural accounts. As I approached the podium, I scanned the audience with practiced casualness, identifying genuinely curious scholars, tenure-protected academics risking reputation to attend, enthusiastic subscribers who had traveled considerable distances, and there, in the back row, sitting with aristocratic posture that required no affectation, Alexander Voss. Even without Thorne's supernatural confirmation, I would have recognized him. Expensive tailoring merely accentuated natural authority. Silver-threaded hair, framed features carved from ambition rather than mere genetics. He radiated controlled intensity like heat from banked coals, predatory patience disguised as scholarly interest. Our eyes met briefly, his slight nod acknowledging a game well played in bringing us to this orchestrated encounter. Thank you for your interest in what began as scholarly curiosity and evolved into something quite unexpected, I began. Voice steady despite the danger prowling at the back of my audience. The Baltic grimoire I've been examining represents a fascinating cultural artifact from a region where multiple magical traditions converged. What followed was a masterclass in calculated revelation, providing verifiable historical context about the grimoire's creation period, demonstrating comprehensive knowledge of Baltic linguistic patterns, deliberately misidentifying certain key symbols while presenting plausible but entirely incorrect theories about the book's primary function. These binding patterns appear ritualistic, I explained, displaying carefully edited photographs, likely representing ceremonial sympathetic magic rather than practical application. The actual imprisonment symbols thus disguised as mere decorative elements. From his position near the stage, Thorne maintained constant awareness of Voss. Through our strengthened connection, I caught impressions of his observations, the collector's micro-expressions of displeasure when I provided strategic misinformation, subtle shifts in posture suggesting concealed weapons, the predatory recognition between hunter and hunted as their eyes occasionally met in mutual acknowledgement. The grimoire itself seemed to respond to the dangerous proximity, pages emitting barely perceptible luminescence visible only to Thorne and me, paper vibrating slightly when discussion approached critical information, temperature dropping noticeably around the container when Voss shifted forward in his seat. When questioning veered toward dangerous territory, binding mechanics, specific runic patterns, technical difficulties manifested with suspicious consistency. Microphones cut out mid-sentence, presentation slides displayed incorrect images, small distractions multiplied through Thorne's concentrated effort to protect critical information without revealing supernatural intervention. The inevitable confrontation arrived during audience Q&A. Voss approached the microphone with casual confidence, his voice carrying the cultured precision of someone accustomed to deferential attention. Fascinating presentation, Ms. Blackwood. I'm curious about your interpretation of the nested containment sigils on the grimoire's binding. The pattern suggests not Slavic influence, as you suggested, but specifically Livonian wolf-binding traditions. Have you considered these might be functional rather than merely decorative? The question operated on multiple levels, challenging my deliberate misattribution, demonstrating his superior knowledge, and directly referencing wolf-binding while maintaining scholarly veneer, chess opening with deadly implications. An excellent observation, I acknowledged, meeting his gaze directly. Baltic magical systems certainly incorporated Livonian elements, particularly during periods of cultural exchange. The functional versus decorative debate continues among scholars, though I find the Grigoriev classification system, which examines contextual usage patterns, offers more nuanced analysis than strictly binary categorization. My response maintained academic composure while redirecting to historical frameworks I genuinely mastered, simultaneously confirming to Thorne through our connection that this was indeed our hunter. Voss's slight smile acknowledged the parry, respect for skilled opponent rather than frustration at deflection. As the formal presentation concluded, Voss made his most significant move. While approaching for the obligatory book signing, he casually adjusted his tie, revealing a silver pendant previously concealed beneath his clothing, intricately carved amulet, matching descriptions from grimoire passages I had recognized but not fully decoded. Through our connection, Thorne's sudden recognition surged like electrical current, the artifact key to his original binding, worn as casual accessory by his potential recapturer. Your research shows remarkable insight for someone relatively new to Baltic occult traditions, Voss commented, extending his business card with practiced elegance. My private collection includes several pieces that might contextualize your grimoire. Perhaps a private viewing could benefit your continuing research. Before I could respond, Thorne materialized at my side with perfect timing, positioning himself as an innocuous human barrier between us. Professor Blackwood's schedule is quite full with academic commitments, he interjected, hand resting lightly on my shoulder in subtle display of protective claim invisible to ordinary observers, but unmistakable to supernatural awareness. The moment crystallized into silent acknowledgement between predators, Voss's slight smile confirming he recognized exactly what Thorne was, fingertips casually touching the silver amulet at his throat in subtle threat, each assessing the other's strengths and vulnerabilities across species boundaries without speaking the truth aloud. Another time, perhaps, Voss conceded graciously, though his eyes promised continuation rather than conclusion. Scholarly pursuit requires patience. Some acquisitions take years to properly secure. Strategic retreat followed protocol established during our preparation. Cafe across from university. Public enough for safety, but private enough for conversation. Thorne positioned himself with clear sight lines to all entrances, hypervigilance manifesting in the precise arrangement of cutlery, before him unused but available as potential weapons. He wears my prison key as jewelry, Thorne observed, voice low and controlled, despite the rage I felt churning through our connection. Centuries of my imprisonment reduced to fashion accessory. He knows exactly what you are. I confirmed, processing the multi-layered confrontation. That pendant matches descriptions from the binding passages. More than matched, Thorne corrected grimly. It is the original, the focus object used during my imprisonment. I could feel its pull even at that distance. The elegant woman appeared without warning, sliding into the third chair at our table with fluid grace that startled even Thorne's supernatural awareness. Silver-streaked dark hair framed features both timeless and precisely present. Her age impossible to determine. Perhaps 40, perhaps much older beneath flawless presentation. The binding calls to what it once held, she stated without introduction, her accent suggesting Baltic origins beneath perfect English, just as the bound calls to what once contained it. Recognition dawned immediately, linguistic patterns matching Silverfang's written communications. Knowledge too specific for coincidence, something in her pupils catching light at impossible angles. Diana, she offered simply. No surname provided or needed. We share common adversary and uncommon nature. You're like me, Thorne stated, not questioning but confirming. Her smile revealed teeth slightly too sharp for conventional dental structure. Similar enough to recognize kin, different enough to maintain separate territories. Her attention shifted to me with unsettling intensity. You've done remarkable work, scholar. Summoning is easy, sustaining is difficult. Breaking what centuries have calcified into destiny requires exceptional strength. The conversation that followed unfolded like ancient ritual, information exchanged with precision, each revelation carrying weight beyond mere facts. The amulet Voss wore functioned as anchor for the binding spell, created by Baltic witch specifically to contain werewolves and other transformed beings. Stolen from original magical lineage by collector ancestors who never fully understood its power but recognized its value. The mechanics are relatively simple, despite their power, Diana explained. fingers tracing patterns on the table's surface that momentarily gleamed with subtle light. The grimoire functions as prison, the amulet as key, the witch's bloodline as original power source. Your summoning temporarily freed Thorne from full containment, but didn't break the fundamental connection binding these elements together. Can it be broken completely? I asked, Scholar's curiosity merging with something far more personal. Diana's expression combined compassion with predatory calculation. Freedom requires 3 elements converging. The amulet must be acquired, counter-ritual performed during specific celestial alignment, and power source provided to permanently sever existing bindings. The alignment? Thorne questioned, intensity sharpening his features. 3 days from now, the trying moon approaches, when lunar position exactly mirrors the configuration during your original binding. And the power source, I pressed, already suspecting the answer. Diana's gaze held mine with ancient knowledge. You. Scholar, your connection to Thorne provides necessary channel. The summoner must become the releaser. Strategic alliance formed with supernatural efficiency. Diana providing detailed information about Voss's heavily secured penthouse overlooking Central Park. Thorne contributing supernatural abilities for infiltration planning. My channel serving as potential distraction and alibi. The collector's security systems proved formidable, but not impenetrable, especially with insider knowledge Diana had accumulated through centuries of watching her enemies. Magical preparation accompanied tactical planning. Diana taught specific counter-ritual techniques, ancient Baltic words I memorized with academic precision, arrangements of elements around the grimoire during celestial alignment, warnings about potential backlash from disrupting centuries-old magical binding. Magic seeks equilibrium, she cautioned. Demonstrating proper intonation of phrases so ancient they predated written Baltic languages. Breaking one bond often requires forming or breaking others. The universe permits no unpaid debts. This precipitated honest discussion of possible outcomes. Success would grant Thorne true freedom, but potentially sever our connection. Failure might return him to the book permanently, and the attempt itself would draw dangerous attention from both magical communities and Voss's considerable resources. There are consequences beyond physical danger, Diana warned, addressing what remained unspoken between us. The connection between you serves as conduit for the unbinding. What remains afterward depends on what exists between you, beyond magical necessity. When Diana departed to make her own preparations, silence settled between Thorne and me, weighted with implications neither had fully articulated. The cafe had emptied around us, evening shadows lengthening across tables abandoned by ordinary patrons with ordinary concerns. What exists between us? I finally asked, scholarly precision inadequate for the question's true dimensions. Thorne's expression combines centuries of loneliness with newfound vulnerability. I existed in darkness so long I forgot light's texture. He said softly, You summoned more than form from imprisonment. You called forth capability for connection I believed lost to centuries of isolation. Is it real? My voice barely exceeded whisper. Or merely magical construct? Does distinction matter? His fingers reached across the table, hovering above mine without touching. The choice to connect deliberately left mine. Magic merely reveals and amplifies what exists beneath perception. It cannot create what has no foundation. My hand moved those final centimeters, completing connection that manifested as visible energy where skin touched skin. Silver light, briefly illuminating our joined fingers before fading from ordinary perception. We proceed, I decided, the scholar and woman speaking as one. Whatever consequences follow. Return to my apartment found us in final preparation mode, practical needs temporarily superseding emotional complexity. I created elaborate videos scheduled to post during our planned infiltration of Voss's penthouse, establishing digital alibi while containing coded message for followers if we failed to return. Thorne prepared physical components for the counter-ritual, arranging elements with ceremonial precision despite the modern setting. The grimoire rested on the table between us, silver inlay pulsing with increasing brilliance as celestial alignment approached. Its wolves seemed more dimensional than before, ruby eyes tracking our movements with awareness transcending mere decoration. Pages occasionally turned without physical intervention, revealing new text that appeared and dissolved like written tide pools. "Are you afraid?" I asked, academic detachment failing before the magnitude of what we planned. Thorne looked up from ritual preparations, expression balancing ancient sorrow with newfound hope. "Fear requires uncertainty," he replied. "I faced certain imprisonment for centuries. Now I face mere possibility of freedom." His smile transformed his face from beautiful to transcendent. Possibility outweighs certainty, even when danger accompanies it. Outside my window, stars shifted in celestial patterns unnoticed by city inhabitants focused on artificial lights. 3 days until alignment. 3 days until we attempted to break centuries-old magic with nothing but stolen knowledge, supernatural alliance, and connection neither fully understood, but both increasingly relied upon. The grimoire's light pulsed in rhythm that matched neither my heartbeat nor Thorne's. But some third pattern, perhaps the universe itself counting down to transformation, we could neither fully predict nor willingly avoid. Chapter 9. The Choice. Night draped Manhattan in velvet darkness, transforming Voss's palatial building into a glittering monument to wealth and secrecy. From our shadow-shrouded vantage point across the street, the penthouse gleamed like a jeweled crown atop the concrete kingdom. Beautiful, untouchable, and laden with deadly promise. Diana approached the main entrance with aristocratic confidence, her silver-streaked hair and tailored attire suggesting wealth sufficient to belong among the building's privileged denizens. Her voice carried across our discreet communication devices as she engaged security personnel with seemingly innocent inquiries about a fictional resident, her Baltic accent thickening strategically to create charming confusion requiring prolonged attention. "The electronic locks have predictable patterns," Thorne murmured beside me, his fingers hovering over the service entrance panel. The air around his hands shimmered with barely visible energy as supernatural senses interfaced with human technology. Something clicked softly, the security light shifting from red to green without alarm activation. "Expensive but unimaginative," I confirmed, monitoring surveillance feeds through the tablet in my hands. Connection established through exploits Diana had provided from centuries of watching her enemies adapt to modern security. "Camera loop is active. We have 17 minutes before automated system check." The grimoire pulsed against my ribs through the specialized container strapped across my body, elder wood lined with protective herbs, absorbing its energetic signature while maintaining the proximity Thorne required. Even through these precautions, I felt its growing awareness, as though the book itself recognized we approached the culmination of its centuries-long purpose. The service elevator ascended with mechanical precision, each floor marked by subtle chime that measured our approach toward confrontation. Thorne's posture shifted as we passed the 30th floor, head tilting in predatory alertness. "Wards begin here," he whispered, nostrils flaring slightly. "Old magic layered with new. Clever construction." Diana's voice whispered through our earpieces. "Northwest corners first. Counterclockwise neutralization." From inner pocket, she had provided silvery liquid in ancient vial, mercury mixed with ingredients we didn't question. Thorne applied it with practiced precision to precise points in the elevator's structure, each application accompanied by whispered words in language predating written Baltic history. The air shimmered briefly, magical resistance dissolving beneath targeted countermeasures. The penthouse doors parted silently, revealing Voss's private museum in all its obscene glory. Soft lighting illuminated dozens of display cases arranged with curator's precision, artifacts from magical traditions spanning continents and millennia. Ancient Egyptian Ushapti figurines positioned beside Mesopotamian protective tablets, Nordic runic stones sharing space with Celtic ritual knives. Behind crystal-clear glass, supernatural specimens floated in arcane solutions, what appeared to be preserved hand of infant werewolf suspended in amber liquid, feathers from creature resembling harpy mounted on black velvet, vial containing swirling mist labeled Breath of Drowned Oracle, Thessalonica 342 CE. "The collection of a madman," Thorne observed, revulsion evident in his controlled tone. "The collection of a true believer," I corrected, scholar's assessment overriding personal disgust. "This represents decades of systematic acquisition. He believes in these powers absolutely." The amulet occupied central position in a freestanding display. Silver pendant wrought in Baltic design, wolf motif with ruby eyes matching the grimoire's inlay with unsettling precision. It rested atop black velvet cushion, surrounded by meticulous documentation of its provenance and theoretical powers. The presentation suggesting both museum-quality preservation and altar-like reverence. Thorne's assessment of security measures revealed layered protection beyond ordinary caution. Conventional alarms I could bypass with technical knowledge. Magical tripwires Diana identified through our communication link, and unexpected element of living guardianship. "Dobermans," Thorne whispered, head turning toward closed door across the gallery. 4. Their scent carries supernatural enhancement, likely blood-bound to Voss through ritual. They know we're here despite our precautions. Diana's voice came through earpiece with urgent clarity. "Implementing diversion. This requires concentration. I cannot accompany you further, but can maintain position here." Through our connection, I sensed rather than saw her ritual, hands moving in precise patterns, ancient words reshaping reality's fabric with practiced ease. The air around us shimmered momentarily before settling into seemingly unchanged state, yet somehow lighter, as though our presence had been partially erased from the universe's awareness. "She's projecting our energetic signature elsewhere in the building," Thorne explained, already moving toward the display containing the amulet. "Temporary, but effective." The Guardian confrontation came without warning. Door across gallery bursting open as 4 massive Dobermans entered with unnatural silence, eyes reflecting light with golden luminescence no natural canine possessed. They approached with military precision, muscular bodies suggesting both exceptional breeding and magical enhancement. Thorne stepped forward, positioning himself between the approaching animals and me with fluid grace. What happened next transcended conventional understanding of communication. No words spoken, no obvious signals exchanged. His posture shifted subtly, spine straightening to full height, shoulders broadening beyond normal human parameters. His eyes blazed sudden gold, pupils elongating vertically in partial transformation that stopped precisely at the threshold of full shift. A sound emerged from his throat, not quite growl, not quite speech. Something carrying subsonic elements that vibrated through floorboards beneath my feet. The Dobermans halted mid-stride, heads lowering in unison, ears flattening against skulls in unmistakable submission. One by one, they retreated to corners of the room, curling into passive positions while maintaining watchful awareness. Dominance established, Thorne stated simply, eyes returning to human appearance. They recognize superior predator. Temporary accord only. We should proceed quickly. The amulet's display case yielded to calculated expertise. Electronic security bypassed through device disguise as ordinary smartphone. Pressure sensors neutralized with precisely calibrated counterweights. When the glass finally lifted, I removed the ancient pendant with archaeologists' reverence, replacing it with convincing replica Diana had provided. The original felt unexpectedly heavy in my palm, emanating cold that penetrated skin to bone despite modest size. It recognizes you, I observed, noting how the metal seemed to pulse against Thorne's proximity. We have been bound for centuries, he replied, voice carrying complex emotions beneath controlled surface. Captor and captive share connection inevitable through sustained proximity. Movement in adjacent rooms shattered our strategic focus. Light spilling beneath door, voice speaking in measured tones that required no introduction. Alexander Voss had unexpectedly returned, his cultivated voice discussing final components needed for the binding reinforcement with unseen conversation partner, position effectively blocking our primary exit route. Silent communication passed between Thorne and me, no words needed, through connection that had deepened beyond conventional understanding. Original plan required returning to prepared location for ritual. New circumstances demanded immediate adaptation. The collector's own museum, saturated with magical artifacts amplifying mystical energies, offered unexpected alternative to planned sanctuary. Ritual preparation proceeded with urgent efficiency. Grimoire positioned on marble pedestal originally displaying Sumerian tablets. Candles representing cardinal directions, arranged from Voss's own collection of ceremonial items. Amulet placed at center of Baltic binding symbol, I drew from memory, using chalk carried for this purpose. Thorne took position within the configuration, expression balancing desperate hope with trepidation born from centuries of disappointment. The incantation flowed from memory with academic precision, my linguistic training ensuring each ancient syllable received proper emphasis and intonation. The grimoire responded immediately, silver light pulsing from inlaid wolves in rhythm matching my voice, rather than any conventional time signature. Temperature dropped dramatically around ritual space, breath becoming visible in crystalline clouds despite building's climate control. Magical manifestation exceeded theoretical prediction. The amulet levitated slightly above drawn symbol, rotating with increasing speed until individual details blurred into silver disk. Connections of visible light formed between pendant and grimoire, glowing strands resembling constellation lines on celestial maps, creating three-dimensional geometric pattern with Thorne at its center. His form became partially translucent. Physical boundaries temporarily suspended as the binding began decoupling from his essence. Separation proceeds, I reported, maintaining ritual cadence despite the extraordinary visual display. Binding structure becoming visible. The hunter's entrance occurred precisely as seventh repetition concluded, Voss stepping through connecting door with casual confidence that transformed to shocked stillness upon witnessing our ritual in progress. His tailored appearance remained immaculate despite late hour, only slightly widened eyes betraying recognition of what we attempted. Fascinating, he observed with collector's clinical interest overriding personal affront. The summoner attempting release ritual rather than reinforcement. Bold, but ultimately futile. His hand moved toward inner pocket with practiced ease. producing small metallic object resembling antique pocket watch, while simultaneously beginning counterspell in ancient Baltic dialect. Words carrying harmonic pattern directly opposing my incantation's rhythm. Thorne's response defied ritual constraints. Breaking formation, he positioned himself between me and Voss, protective instinct triggering partial transformation beyond previous displays. Fingers elongated into clawed appendages. Canines extending visibly behind curled lips, eyes blazing gold with predatory focus. The growl emerging from his throat carried supernatural harmonics that shattered nearby glass cases, releasing scents of preservation fluids and disturbed magical artifacts into circulating air. Voss revealed capabilities extending far beyond mere collection expertise. Silver energy coalesced around his hands, forming whip-like extensions that struck toward Thorne with precision, suggesting centuries of practice rather than academic understanding. The collector's expression remained composed despite the physical impossibility of his actions, confirming Diana's warning that he had absorbed power from his acquisitions rather than merely preserving them. "I've studied every binding spell in existence," Voss stated conversationally, dodging Thorne's advance with inhuman speed. "Collected every artifact of significance from Baltic traditions. Your freedom was never possible, merely temporary release before recapture. The magical battle disrupted unbinding process, uncontrolled energy surges manifesting as lightning-like discharges between artifacts, the amulet spinning with increasing velocity until nearly invisible, grimoire pages turning violently without physical contact. I struggled to maintain incantation despite chaos erupting around me, each syllable requiring concentration against growing magical turbulence. When Voss attempted to reclaim the amulet, intervention came from unexpected source. The grimoire itself released pulse of silver energy that knocked the hunter backward, pages continuing their autonomous movement while inlaid wolves seemed to shift position on binding, ruby eyes glowing with internal light, suggesting consciousness beyond mere magical construct. The book chooses, I realized aloud, understanding flowing through scholarly analysis. It's not merely prison, but entity with its own agency. The binding fracture occurred with visual drama matching its magical significance. The mystical tether between Thorne and grimoire manifesting as silver cords stretching between them, glowing with increasing brilliance until structure became visible within its light. Centuries of magical imprisonment resolved into observable pattern, complex knotwork binding Thorne's essence to the book through the amulet's anchor point. The strands stretched taut as ritual reached culmination, individual fibers beginning to separate like rope unraveling under tension. Thorne's expression revealed mixture of excruciating pain and transcendent liberation, freedom purchased through temporary agony as centuries-old magic unraveled strand by strand. What happened next defied even Diana's predictions. Rather than complete separation, the magic stabilized in unexpected configuration. The binding transformed rather than destroyed, connection between Thorne and grimoire remaining but fundamentally altered. The silver cord thinned and multiplied, creating web-like structure extending between Thorne, the book, and unexpectedly me. Binding reforming as triangular relationship rather than linear imprisonment. Not freedom, Thorne gasped, wonder replacing pain in his expression. Transformation. The hunter made final desperate attempt, silver dagger with ancient inscriptions appearing in his hand, body launching toward Thorne with supernatural speed. The attack met unexpected resistance, shield of energy emanating from combined power of our triangular connection, repelling Voss with force that sent him crashing into his own display cases. Glass shattered around his collapsing form, blood mixing with preservation fluids from damaged specimens, unconsciousness claiming him amid destruction of his precious collection. The ritual's completion brought unexpected consequence. Swirling portal opening beside the grimoire, diameter approximately human height, interior showing snow-covered Baltic forest beneath stars arranged in unfamiliar pattern. Glimpses of primitive settlement appeared in distance, structures matching historical records of sites dating to Thorne's original era. Wind carrying scents of pine and wood smoke drifted through the opening, bringing tangible evidence of world centuries removed from Manhattan penthouses and digital existence. "Your original time," I whispered, understanding without explanation. The binding's dissolution offers return passage. Thorne approached the portal with expression of complex emotion, recognition, longing, grief for world lost to centuries of imprisonment. His hand extended toward the opening, fingers passing partially through threshold to touch snowflakes that dissolved against his warmth. Through our connected awareness, I felt his conflicted response, familiarity of home landscapes warring with centuries of change within himself, person he had been versus being he had become. His eyes met mine across the magical divide, gold receding to human appearance, yet carrying knowledge transcending mortal experience. The choice crystallized between us without words. Return to proper time and place, reclaiming life interrupted by centuries of imprisonment, or remain in world utterly foreign to his origins, but containing connection neither had anticipated. "I have lived between worlds too long to belong fully to either," he said finally, voice carrying certainty beneath sorrow. "The past offers familiarity without growth. The present offers unknown with possibility." He stepped away from the portal, movement deliberate as formal vow, to stand beside me. The mystical opening closed with sound like distant wolf howl, snow-scented wind briefly caressing our faces before dissipating into climate-controlled air of the violated penthouse. Escape required immediate action, Diana meeting us at predetermined extraction point, her expression revealing surprise at seeing both of us emerge together. "You chose present," she observed to Thorne, statement rather than question. "I chose connection," he corrected, fingers intertwining with mine in gesture simultaneously human and transcendent. Strategic discussion filled journey to safety, Diana outlining protective measures against Voss's inevitable retribution once recovered, supernatural communities that might offer assistance given changed circumstances. Immediate practical considerations for existence outside normal parameters of either human or supernatural classification. "The hunter collects what he cannot understand," Diana concluded as taxi delivered us to my apartment building. "You have become something without precedent or category. His greatest frustration and perhaps your strongest protection." The grimoire accompanied us, transformed beyond its original purpose. Upon return to my apartment, examination revealed silver inlay had shifted. Wolves no longer confrontational, but positioned side by side, ruby eyes facing same direction rather than opposing. New inscription appearing along binding that translated approximately to paths joined through choice rather than compulsion. Thorne moved through the apartment with newfound freedom, no longer constrained by proximity limitations that had defined his initial manifestation. His physicality had solidified completely, corporeal presence indistinguishable from human except in moments of heightened emotion when supernatural aspects surfaced briefly. Yet connection between us remained, transformed rather than severed, voluntary partnership replacing mystical compulsion. As dawn approached, we stood before my living room window, watching night surrender to uncertain dawn, the grimoire resting between us on desk that had witnessed his original summoning. In glass reflection, I observed how perfectly we manifested the book's transformed imagery, standing side by side, rather than opposed, facing same direction despite originating from worlds separated by centuries and fundamental nature. What are we now? I asked finally. Scholar seeking classification for unprecedented phenomenon. His smile combined ancient wisdom with newfound wonder. Something without historical precedent, neither fully separate nor completely merged. His fingers traced the grimoire's new inscription with reverent understanding. We are the first page of the story not yet written, bound by choice rather than compulsion. Outside, Manhattan awakened to ordinary Tuesday with pedestrian concerns and mundane ambitions. Unaware that in an apartment overlooking its ceaseless movement, beings existed beyond conventional categorization, former prisoner and summoner, transformed through choice into partnership, transcending supernatural and human boundaries, connected by bonds both visible and invisible, writing new grimoire of existence without precedent or limitation. The uncharted territory before us loomed both exhilarating and terrifying, path without established markers or guaranteed destination. Yet the alternative, separation into conventional categories, return to established limitations, represented certainty without possibility. Between these options, choice had never truly existed at all. Chapter 10, Pack Life. 6 months transformed my scholarly sanctuary into something beyond definition in conventional language. The apartment, once cluttered shrine to academic pursuit, now breathed with dual existence. Reinforced furniture accommodated supernatural strength in moments of forgotten restraint. Blackout curtains shielded monthly transformations when rural escape proved impossible. Ancient artifacts nestled against modern technology with surprising harmony. Baltic protection symbols carved into doorframes. A centuries-old silver mirror hanging above state-of-the-art computer equipment. Herbs with names forgotten by modern botany growing in kitchen windowsills beside basil and mint. Home, in its truest sense, territory marked not through ownership documentation, but primal recognition between beings who had chosen shared existence against all historical precedent. Midnight pages evolved beyond recognition. Subscriber count crossing millions, with algorithmic blessing that transformed niche academic curiosity into cultural phenomenon. Content walked dangerous precipice, fictional supernatural narratives constructed from Thorne's actual experiences, academic framework providing plausible deniability while conveying genuine knowledge to those prepared to recognize truth beneath entertainment veneer. Your latest video reached unprecedented engagement metrics, my newly hired assistant reported during our weekly review. The segment on Baltic transformation symbolism generated particularly strong response in Northern European demographics. I nodded without revealing the significance. That specific content contained coded information for supernatural entities in regions still practicing ancient traditions. Warning about particular celestial alignment affecting transformation abilities. Information vital to beings living secretly among ordinary populations, disguised as entertainment for everyone else. Thorne integrated into modern existence with surprising adaptation. Diana's connections provided carefully constructed documentation. Academic credentials from non-existent Baltic University, immigration records suggesting conventional arrival rather than supernatural manifestation. Digital history inserted retroactively into systems designed to track human existence. His position as folkloric consultant at local university allowed scholarly contribution while accommodating monthly absences during lunar cycle. His natural authority and centuries of accumulated knowledge making him unexpectedly suited to academic environment despite his unconventional origin. Professor Blackwood's perspective on transformation narratives revolutionizes our understanding of Baltic cultural development. the department chair had declared during recent faculty meeting. Unaware that her valued colleague had personally experienced the traditions under discussion centuries before academic analysis formalized them. Full moon transformations evolved from crisis to controlled ritual. The rural cabin purchased with channel proceeds provided secure environment, remote enough for privacy, structured for both safety and comfort, equipped with recording equipment for scientific documentation, creating unprecedented record of werewolf physiology. What began as desperate containment transformed into celebration of primal nature too long suppressed by magical imprisonment. The cellular reconfiguration occurs at quantum level, I explained to Diana during her most recent visit, reviewing microscopic footage of transformation. Conventional physics cannot explain the conservation of mass during the process. Conventional physics developed without accounting for realities beyond its measurement capabilities. She replied with millennium-old amusement, "Your documentation may eventually bridge these artificial divisions in human understanding." Voss's conspicuous absence from occult community suggested intervention beyond our knowledge. His collection mysteriously appeared in museums worldwide, anonymously donated with meticulous documentation of provenance. His penthouse sold to technology entrepreneur with no supernatural connections. Digital presence erased with thoroughness, suggesting expertise beyond conventional hackers. "Did you?" I once began asking Diana during her occasional visits. Her smile revealed slightly too sharp canines. "Some hunters require hunting in turn," she replied, neither confirming nor denying direct intervention. "The collector has been collected by those with longer memories and deeper resources than even he possessed." Diana herself gradually revealed more about her nature. Centuries-old being from supernatural tradition different from Thorne's, collector of knowledge rather than artifacts, self-appointed guardian maintaining equilibrium between magical and mundane worlds. Her silver-streaked hair and ageless features disguised entity who had witnessed empires rise and dissolve. Her casual references to historical figures suggesting personal acquaintance rather than academic familiarity. "You've created something without precedent," she observed, examining the transformed relationship between Thorne, myself, and the grimoire. "A willing trinity rather than forced imprisonment. Many will watch with interest how this evolution proceeds." The grimoire itself underwent most dramatic transformation, no longer prison but repository. Ancient spells accessible without danger, new pages appearing periodically with information relevant to current situations. The book demonstrated awareness transcending mere magical construct, adapting to circumstances with sentient precision that suggested consciousness beyond our understanding. "It learns," Thorne explained, watching new text materializing on previously blank page, shimmering symbols resolving into warnings about upcoming celestial configuration affecting supernatural energies. The book was never merely container, but entity with its own purpose. Our liberation freed it to fulfill original function beyond simple imprisonment. Introduction to hidden supernatural society occurred gradually, Diana bringing selected visitors, each with unique abilities and histories. Ancient vampire maintaining art gallery, specializing in night scene paintings, his clientele unaware that his expertise spanned centuries of direct observation. Fey entity operating botanical garden, featuring plants believed extinct, preserved through magical connection to realms beyond human perception. Displaced elemental, manifesting as brilliant meteorologist. Her weather predictions informed by personal connection to atmospheric patterns beyond technological measurement. Each visitor brought knowledge, resources, and perspective from existence balanced between worlds, forming support network for beings navigating modern existence while concealing fundamental natures exceeding human understanding. "You've become something of a beacon," Diana explained after particularly productive gathering in our living room. Supernatural beings from various traditions sharing information across boundaries rarely crossed. The summoner who chose partnership rather than control. The werewolf who rejected both past and imprisonment for uncertain present. Together, you represent possibility that draws others seeking similar balance. Historical displacement affected Thorne in complex patterns. Occasional melancholy for lost era, balanced by fascination with present possibilities. His perspective enriched my understanding of both historical continuity and humanity's constants across centuries. Your people believe technological advancement represents fundamental evolution, he observed while navigating streaming service with casual expertise that belied his temporal origin. Yet I recognize the same hopes, fears, and desires that motivated my contemporaries beneath your modern distractions. The packaging evolves while contents remain essentially unchanged. My academic career flourished alongside digital presence, scholarly articles on Baltic folklore gaining recognition in fields previously dismissive of such fringe interests. Careful navigation between publishable research and protected supernatural knowledge, establishing reputation as leading expert in traditions whose genuine significance remained my most carefully guarded secret. Your analysis of transformational symbolism in pre-Christian Baltic cultures has revised our entire understanding of regional development. My department chair enthused during tenure review. The committee particularly noted your ability to contextualize folkloric elements within broader historical movements without resorting to sensationalism that often plagues such scholarship. If she noticed the slight smile exchanged between her esteemed colleague and his research assistant attending the meeting, she attributed it to professional satisfaction rather than private amusement at academia's blind spots concerning literal truth behind metaphorical interpretation. The relationship between Thorne and myself evolved beyond supernatural parameters that initiated it. Initial forced proximity becoming deliberate partnership, magical tether now foundation rather than limitation. The bond transformed from imposition to choice, deepening into connection that transcended conventional classification. Language fails between worlds, Thorne observed one evening, moonlight transforming his features to otherworldly beauty that reminded me of his fundamental difference from humanity despite his perfect assimilation. Your terminology separates friend from lover, from family. With artificial precision, we exist beyond these boundaries. What would your people call this? I asked, scholar's curiosity transcending personal involvement. His expression softened with rare vulnerability. There is a word in my first language, before Baltic adaptations, before forced linguistic evolution, that translates approximately to soul whose absence would render existence meaningless, regardless of physical survival. Perhaps that approach is truth. Channel responsibilities evolved alongside personal adaptation, strategic decisions about knowledge sharing requiring constant evaluation. Genuine magical information coded within entertaining content created resource for others experiencing supernatural encounters while maintaining necessary secrecy, balancing truth and protection without sacrificing either completely. Your episode on protective symbols generated interesting correspondence. My assistant noted during content review, several viewers independently reported successful applications against negative energy in their homes, particularly the Baltic configuration you demonstrated as historically authentic recreation. The symbols in question represented genuine protection against minor supernatural intrusions, effective enough to address common disturbances while insufficient for major manifestations requiring more direct intervention. carefully calibrated knowledge sharing that protected both supernatural secrets and humans experiencing genuine encounters beyond conventional explanation. Thorne's transformations evolved from lunar compulsion to controlled experience, ability to change partially outside monthly cycle, maintain consciousness during full transformation, even communicate telepathically while in wolf form, representing mastery impossible during imprisonment. The mind perceives physical form as limitation, only when believing it to be fixed reality. He explained after particularly successful partial transformation that maintained vocal capabilities despite significant physical alteration. Imprisonment enforced separation between aspects of self that naturally exist as spectrum rather than binary states. Our apartment gradually became acknowledged safe haven within supernatural community, displaced beings occasionally seeking temporary shelter. Thorne's territorial nature expanding to accommodate concept of extended pack, my human perspective helping others navigate contemporary challenges their extended lifespans hadn't prepared them to address. Your building has acquired certain reputation, Diana commented with characteristic understatement. A place where worlds touch without breaking, where knowledge flows in multiple directions. You've established something resembling embassy between realities, usually separated by necessity and fear. Her warning came during routine visit, casual appearance disrupted by uncharacteristic concern shadowing features usually composed by centuries of practiced control. Something stirs in deeper currents, she observed, fingers tracing protective symbol on our kitchen table with unconscious precision. Ancient powers, recognizing changing patterns as supernatural beings become more visible in digital age. Your successful binding modification represents both hope and threat to established orders preferring separation between worlds. The grimoire responded to her warning with characteristic autonomy, new section appearing after her departure, previously invisible text describing connections between magical traditions across cultures and eras. Suggesting Thorne's imprisonment represented single instance within larger pattern of supernatural suppression spanning centuries. The bindings were never merely individual containments, I realized. Scholars' analysis revealing pattern previously obscured by isolated focus. They represent systematic effort to separate magical existence from mundane reality. Separation serving interests beyond mere fear of difference, Thorne agreed. Studying newly revealed text with expression balancing academic fascination with personal involvement. Controlled knowledge distribution maintaining power structures across realms. Digital security became paramount concern following these revelations. Advanced protection implemented across platforms, multiple channels creating information ecosystem where critical knowledge distributed rather than centralized. Failsafes, ensuring supernatural secrets couldn't be silenced through single-point vulnerability. The grimoire suggests knowledge deliberately fragmented historically, I explained to Diana during security consultation. We're reversing the process through controlled reconnection rather than isolation. Her approving smile suggested plans proceeding along directions she had hoped without directly orchestrating. Patterns broken cannot reform in identical configuration. The question becomes, what new pattern emerges from deliberate rather than accidental restructuring? Our network expanded beyond immediate supernatural contacts. Certain subscribers revealing themselves through carefully coded communications as either non-human entities or humans with legitimate supernatural encounters. Forming loose alliance of knowledge seekers contextualizing magical realities without mainstream exposure that would endanger delicate balance between worlds. The comments on your lunar cycle video include 17 distinct supernatural entities communicating through established patterns, my assistant reported, having unknowingly developed remarkable talent for identifying coded communications. Additionally, approximately 200 human subscribers appear to have genuine awareness of supernatural elements discussed beneath your academic framework. This digital community crystallized philosophical approach evolving between Thorne and myself, neither exposing supernatural existence completely nor allowing its exploitation, maintaining equilibrium, protecting both magical beings and humans unprepared for such knowledge while creating pathways for necessary interaction where appropriate. Complete separation failed historically. Thorne observed during strategy discussion with Diana and select members of our growing network. Complete integration risks catastrophic disruption to both societies. The middle path requires continuous adjustment rather than fixed boundary. The channel's one-year anniversary of the original summoning provided opportunity for milestone celebration. Special video thanking subscribers while encoding deeper message for those with understanding to perceive it. Thorne appeared briefly on camera, visibility calibrated through Diana's guidance to appear normal to ordinary viewers while revealing his supernatural nature to those with perceptive abilities exceeding human limitation. Consider it controlled revelation test, Diana suggested during planning. Those prepared to see truth will recognize his nature. Others will perceive only the scholarly assistant you present publicly. Their reactions will map awareness distribution among your audience. Results proved fascinating. Mainstream comments noted his academic contributions and surprisingly telegenic presence for scholarly type, while private messages from supernatural viewers expressed everything from shock to gratitude for deliberate inclusion, acknowledging their existence. The first controlled step toward rehabilitation rather than imprisonment, Diana observed with satisfaction. Recognition without exposure. Legacy considerations emerged naturally from this successful experiment. Discussions about Grimoire's future beyond our individual existences, plans for eventual transfer to trustworthy successors, recognition that our story represented single chapter in narrative extending beyond normal human lifespan. The book has witnessed centuries, Thorne reminded during particularly intense planning session. It will continue beyond us. Regardless of our arrangements, the question becomes whether we influence its next partnership or allow chance to determine trajectory. We marked the actual summoning anniversary with ritual transformation, elements from original calling repurposed for celebration rather than compulsion, magical acknowledgement of circumstances transformed beyond recognition within single journey around the sun. From imprisonment to partnership, I intoned. Placing the grimoire at center of carefully arranged symbols drawn in mixture of salt, herbs, and wine rather than the blood originally required. From separation to connection, from compulsion to choice. The book responded with unprecedented display. Silver light emanating from inlaid wolves, creating three-dimensional projection above its open pages. Showing our journey from first manifestation through transformation to current partnership in symbolic rather than literal imagery. The magical memory culminated in representation of three interlocking spirals. Thorne, myself, and the grimoire itself formed into trinity of mutual support rather than linear hierarchy of controller and controlled. As display faded, Thorne's heightened senses registered subtle shift outside our protected space, his posture straightening with predatory alertness at centuries of civilization couldn't entirely suppress. Familiar presence, he noted, voice casual, despite the sudden tension evident in his body language. Magical signature similar to Voss, but distinctly different. Observation rather than immediate threat. Diana had warned such attention would inevitably follow our successful navigation of supernatural politics, our unprecedented arrangement drawing notice from various powers with interest in boundaries between worlds. Where once such detection would have triggered panic, Now it generated merely strategic consideration. Let them observe, I decided after brief consultation through our silent connection. They'll see not vulnerability, but readiness. The preparations developed through experience with Voss provided template for addressing future challenges. Combined abilities now representing formidable defense where once we scrambled for survival. Confidence replacing anxiety through proven success against seemingly overwhelming odds. Later that evening, I live-streamed to followers while Thorne sat just beyond camera range, discussing theoretical. Binding magic with new authority born from direct experience disguised as academic research. Him adding occasional comments that viewers found entertainingly insightful without recognizing their origin in centuries of personal knowledge. The grimoire rested open between us on desk that had witnessed his original manifestation. Pages displaying text about cycles of magical awakening across history. Its silver wolf motif now matched by silver bookmark Thorne absently touched during conversation. Symbol of imprisonment transformed into emblem of connection freely chosen. Visual representation of journey from compulsion to partnership. Scholars often misunderstand the fundamental nature of binding magic, I explained to the camera with measured academic precision. The tradition emphasizes not control but connection, the boundary between entities becoming permeable in ways that transform both participants rather than merely subjugating one to another's will. Thorne's slight smile acknowledged the personal truth beneath scholarly presentation. Through our connection, I felt rather than heard his response. Wordless confirmation of transformation neither could have anticipated when supernatural imprisonment accidentally became liberation through unexpected bond. Outside our windows, the city continued its mundane existence, millions living adjacent to supernatural reality without recognition or acknowledgement, separated by perception rather than actual distance. Within our carefully constructed sanctuary, worlds met without breaking. Academia and ancient magic, digital technology and supernatural ability, human curiosity and immortal experience creating unprecedented alliance against separation enforced through centuries of deliberate division. The grimoire's newest text shimmered briefly before settling into permanence, words describing not past imprisonment, but future possibility. Boundaries dissolved through choice create connections transcending their original components. The wolf, the scholar, and the book begin pattern extending beyond individual existence into potential limited only by courage to transform rather than merely preserve. New chapter indeed, not merely in literal text, but existence itself, stretching beyond these pages into territory yet unexplored, chosen rather than imposed, created through partnership rather than control. Illuminated not by certainty, but possibility willingly embraced despite its inherent risks. Precisely as life should be, whether human, supernatural, or something existing in the liminal space between established categories where the most interesting discoveries inevitably await those brave enough to venture beyond conventional borders.